delighted to welcome you all to the Nebraska Arts Council Basic Support Grants panel. And the review panel is going to be looking at applications of the basic support grants for $1 million and above. And all of the decisions that are being made today will be passed on for approval at the Nebraska Arts Council Board of Directors meeting on June 7th. Right now, I would like to introduce those who are joining us here, the 4 panelists and our NAC staff that are in attendance. I'll begin with the panelists. Maybe you can just wave when I say your name. Mark McLaughlin, who is from the Nebraska Arts Council Board. Leah Miles, who is with Crystal Bridges. Maria Laura, who is Leslie, who is with Miami-Dade. And Kenneth Williams from Texas. All right. In addition to these panelists, we have some of the Nebraska Arts Council staff. Suzanne Weiss, Executive Director. Mike Markey, Deputy Director. Rachel Morgan, Program Specialist. Josh Brown, Program Coordinator, who's going to be doing our technology today. Jennifer Dibellis, the Art Grants Administrator. And Ann Alston, who is taking minutes. Okay, the procedure or process that we're going to be going through will be that there will be the applicants will have 2 minutes to present a brief summary analysis. And remember that all of the panelists have read through all of your materials. So this is a brief summary. And please we will be timing, so please try to keep within the time. If your time runs out, you certainly have another half minute to finish up your thoughts. But it's to your advantage to have the discussion with the panelists and hear what they have to say. We will then have the primary reviewer, then the secondary reviewer, and then each of the other 2 panelists to make any comments or ask any questions. That'll be followed by a 10-minute question and answer period and interaction between the panelists and the applicants. At the end of that, we will give the panelists time to look at their scores again and do any revision of their scores for your application before we move on to the next applicant. All right, then let us begin with our first applicant, which is Lincoln Orchestra Association. And we would ask that each applicant please introduce yourself and tell us your position at the organization. Lincoln Orchestra Association.
Hi, I'm Barbara Zachary. I am the only one joining us from LSO today. I am currently celebrating my 18th season as Executive Director with LSO.
You have 2 minutes to give us your synopsis.
Perfect. Okay. I will start with a word about our financials during the pandemic, everyone's favorite topic. As you know, in order to contain expenses, a lot of orchestras, immediately reduced whatever expenses they could. And for us, that included choosing not to fill a half-time position that had just come open. And through our loyal donor base and government funding and PPP loans, we were indeed able to fund the remaining salaries, including 100% of our orchestra salaries for those canceled concerts in the spring of 2020, and 100% of our orchestra salaries for every concert since then, including all of the times that we had musicians who couldn't fit on stage due to our distancing requirements. They still received their salary. This kind of puts a fine point on our general philosophy of being deeply committed to making LSO a priority organization. And our peer organizations spend about 25% of their budget on orchestra salaries and fringe benefits. And LSO is really proud that our investment is 36%, which is 11% above that average. In fact, as we looked at the current climate, we realized that next season's planned salary increase is not going to keep pace with inflation. And so our board actually voted to give an additional 3% increase to the orchestra for next season. Artistically, we're so excited about next season. It has really solidified since we sent that initial draft in March. We are thrilled that on every single classical concert, we have a premiere of a new or new to LSO piece by a living composer. We're featuring groundbreaking artists such as Dano Bernard Romaine, tenor Lily Pulliam, he's in Cleveland this week playing Othello, and he'll be performing opera music with us and a recital of spirituals. So I could go on all day about how excited we are to return to in-person delivery of all of our education and outreach programs, but it looks like I'm out of time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. All right, Mark, you are the primary reviewer.
Yeah, thanks, Sherry, and welcome, Barbara. So the LSO, in terms of programming, they have a series of 10 concerts that are attended by almost 10,000 people. 6 of the concerts are classical, 2 are affordable 1-hour family concerts where they have things like puppets and family type offerings. They have one pop concerts a year. This year it's going to be Star Wars, which I'm sure will be a hit. They have an annual holiday pops, and they are ending this year with Dvorak Symphony No. 9, which is a good one. I thought they had an excellent mix of traditional offerings and then offerings to reach out to different audiences and to bring in new people. Regarding community outreach, they reach over 13,000 students in over 90 schools throughout Nebraska, including certain free concerts for underserved populations. In terms of their artistic excellence, I appreciated the links that you gave, and in particular, I reviewed the Mahler Symphony No. 4 link that you gave, which I thought was very, very good. So that was appreciated on more than one level, but as a reviewer as well. In terms of audience development, for all first-time audience members, they put a card on their seat, and then the first-time people go and talk to board members, and they get discounted tickets. So I thought that was a very thoughtful, welcoming approach, for a whole experience, that when people come in, it's clear that LSO made some efforts to make them comfortable and make it a positive experience to try to get people to come back, which I thought was excellent. They had a 10-year plan, strategic plan, starting in 2017. It was one page. I didn't see any follow-up or adjustments during COVID. There was no follow-up that I saw, and apologies if I missed it, but in terms of, I would have appreciated a little bit more follow-up on how you were doing, especially for a 10-year plan, which is normal. I'd say a more typical strategic plan is more in the 3 to 5 years. Board representation was excellent, top-notch for Lincoln. A lot of different businesses were represented, so that's to your credit. Their budget was around $1 million. They get about 15% of that from their foundation, which speaks to the commitment of the community and your fundraising efforts. Over $350,000 of that went directly to musicians, which, and Barbara, you spoke to that. That's always appreciated, that the musicians are getting, a substantial amount of your budget, because that's obviously what you do. Ticket revenue was $150,000. In terms of community outreach, I thought that was a strong portion of this application. They partner with Family Literacy, a program that goes through the Lincoln Public Schools to serve immigrant and refugee and other communities. They provide free transportation and complimentary tickets to each family concert and their Christmas or their holiday concert. They host over 5,000 students to their young people concerts. They have a one-on-one concert for people in certain Lincoln hospitals, which I thought was really neat. Hadn't heard of that before, so don't know how big that is, but I thought that was a really neat part. Their conductor and concert master visits regularly high schools and middle schools and works with the Lincoln Youth Symphony, which is awesome. So long story short, their community outreach was substantial. And then in audience development, I was glad that you took us back to 2011 when you decided to cut prices and you had a tripling of your audience, which is just great. And again, talked about the first-time guests, talked about the audience surveys, good discussion of reaching out to certain underserved communities. So all in all, I thought this was a strong application.
All right. The secondary reviewer is Kenneth.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the update. It's really great to hear that those salaries for musicians will be able to increase over time. That's wonderful. I appreciated that this organization seeks to perform classics and newer works, all the while making sure to underscore their own mission of inspiration through engaging performance. I think this organization deserves some kudos for their efforts to pivot their programming during the pandemic. Their commitment to audiences and artists is commendable. I would have appreciated some greater detail on the programs as it pertains to those artists and the pieces involved. I myself am not an expert in music, so I would have appreciated maybe some detail about those artists' background and how they're coming together to form the season. In terms of planning and evaluation, I think you all have good measures in place like surveys and feedback collecting. I would be curious to know more about the data collection and how that is used to measure impact, both in terms of programming and economic impact. Like Mark mentioned, a 10-year strategic plan is a large undertaking, so I would have also appreciated a callback to that, to an update to see where we are now. But I do think the solidification of governance policies is a great move in a good direction for the health of the organization. That was nice to read about. I think the fundraising and development efforts of the organization seem to be paying off, though I did want a little bit more annotation in the budget. I suppose it seems a little bit condensed and there weren't any notes to explain other expenses or things that were compartmentalized. In terms of outreach and engagement, I think the social impact program is doing wonderful work in the community and providing much needed services. I saw strong community partnerships in the application, and I can see efforts to diversify audiences, and I would encourage this group to keep thinking about ways to reach that goal.
Thank you. Any comments, Leah?
Yes, you know, I echo both Mark and Kenneth's comments for sure and agree with them. In terms of your artistic merit, your history and the level of performers you bring in is pretty phenomenal. So that's a really wonderful resource for Nebraska. I also agree that your outreach and engagement, your community partnerships were extremely strong in this application, which I really appreciate. My only comment there is I would like to maybe see older adults, maybe senior centers, maybe included in some of that outreach. But overall, really amazing work.
Thank you. Maria Laura?
I had to remind myself after reading this application that their budget is only $1 million because they do so much. I was like, are you sure you're doing this? I mean, it's incredible, the amount of work that they do, and it's all fantastic. And I agree with all the previous comments. I just wanted to highlight one program that I thought was just really wonderful, which is the Harmony and Healing Music and Wellness program that they have. Just overall a stellar application. So thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you. And now we're open for questions and answers between the panelists and Barbara.
And Barbara, if you would like, if you felt that there were some things that you could a list, you know, based on the comments, by all means, go ahead and respond to things that maybe Mark
Sure.
and Kenneth had said.
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me that was echoed by a couple of you was just our strategic plan. And I next time we do this application, I will find a spot to kind of tuck in a little bit more information, because what our board does is annually, each committee on the board takes one kind of item in that strategic plan and says, it's not the sort of strategic plan that's like, we're going to have 12,000 people in seats by this year. You know, it just says we want to attract enthusiastic and overflowing audiences, right? And so they say, how can we do that? And so that's, for instance, a direct result of our strategic plan was that first timers table that was developed by our audience development committee. So there are certain things that have been specifically, they say, okay, this year we're going to tackle this piece of the plan and move it forward by this piece. And that's kind of, you'll see how we moved our DEI initiative forward was by asking every committee to do that instead of kind of siloing it to the work of one committee. But I will find a way to next time to kind of clarify that a little bit more in the application. I will say that roadmap of our strategic plan has been incredibly helpful during the last 2 years as we have faced such difficult decisions, and a different board with a different plan would have made very different decisions than this orchestra made. And I think that as you talk to, you know, however many 15 different arts organizations, you'll find people dealing with all of the difficult decisions they've had to make in 15 different ways. And that plan really has served as kind of our guidepost and our kind of shining light of where we want to be as an organization. I will say your comment about older adults, I need to just highlight that a little bit, because lots of our Harmony and Healing programs are at elder care centers. And one of our season sponsors is an Emmanuel Communities an Emmanuel Communities home. And so we do lots of stuff, you know, with them as partners. So yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's wonderful.
Other comments, questions, ideas? Okay, then are we good to move on and give the panelists a couple minutes if they want to make any adjustments to their scores? Why don't you kind of give Mike a heads up when you're finished so that we can move on to our next applicant. Thank you very much, Barbara. We
Thank you
appreciate
so
all
much.
your.
Great to meet all of you.
Is everyone ready to
Just
move
a
on?
few more seconds for me, please.
Okay.
And we're actually 5 minutes ahead of schedule, so we can catch
That's
our breath.
okay.
And
So when technology intervenes later, we might have to have that 5 minutes.
well, the next applicant is here, so as soon as we're ready, we can go ahead and.
We'll wait. Kenneth is adjusting.
Perfect.
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Leah,
Okay.
did Leah give a thumbs up? Okay.
Okay, then our next applicant is Omaha Theater Company.
Okay. Josh, want to go ahead and let her in?
Yep, one sec here. I'm working on it.
Okay, thank you. We are joined by Janelle Kupka.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, Janelle, would you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what your position is?
I'm the finance director at the Rose Theater, or the Omaha Theater Company. But I think we're waiting for Matt Gutchuk. He's the artistic director to join us. And he would be doing the commentary.
It's a good thing we had that 5 minutes.
I know. Sorry.
No.
I know he was in rehearsals till late last night, so maybe he's not up and at 'em yet.
I feel like we should have somebody do a dog and pony show while we're waiting.
I know. Well, as an arts organization, we should have probably hired a string quartet or something. You know, they could have
Is it
played.
ready, Josh? We're on, okay. Matt, are you on?
Actually, for some reason, Mark Kressel from
Yeah.
Omaha Conservatory is there.
Matt is now in the waiting room. We can let him in. And Mark, we will come back to you when it's your time. All right, thank you. I will, Josh, if you want to go ahead and send Mark back to the waiting room. Thank you. And here comes, oh, doggone it.
There we go.
Matt,
Matt's here.
Matt?
And Janelle is relieved.
There you go. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Matt, would you please introduce yourself and your position? And you have 2 minutes to give a brief synopsis overview for the panelists before they give their comments.
Sure. Well, thank you. My name is Matt Gutschik. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the artistic director here at the Rose Theater. And in our current moment, there's a lot of enthusiasm here, and it's around some areas of particular growth for us from a mission development standpoint and financially, as you can see in our application. First, we've opened our Youth Artist Studios, which is really state-of-the-art, 27,000 square foot facility that's dedicated completely to the education of young people. And so that's an incredible asset to the community and to the organization. It has represented an immense opportunity to expand the number of students that we are reaching with our classes in musical theater disciplines, as well as in our classes in creative drama-based disciplines. Additionally, our community connections work has taken the opportunity to sort of develop new and deepen existing partnerships with community organizations in the human service sector. That takes a lot of different forms. Events on site where we're showing groups hospitality, a meal, an activity, chance to see a show, way more than just free tickets. And then completely customizable programming offsite that fits the curricular goals of those organizations, like Bannister's Leadership Academy, for example, which has sort of a leadership 12 point sort of emphasis model. And we go in and do workshops that bring to life some of those character traits. So those are just two areas of growth that we were really excited to highlight for discussion. Hopefully that was 2 minutes.
Perfect. We will then go to primary reviewer, who is Kenneth.
Hey. Well, it seems that theater education is a huge goal and priority of this organization, and its variety of programming really seems to back that up in their mission well. So I appreciated seeing that. I think the Community Connections program is an especially important initiative of the organization and seems like a great program for outreach. I also appreciated reading about the additional training provided to BIPOC teaching artists. I think it's great to be able to give staff and contract staff those tools for success. Congratulations on the opening of the Rose Studios for youth artists. There is really great potential there for return on investment stories and continued growth. So I'm interested to see how that impacts the next strategic plan. I did want to know more about the touring group in terms of its reach and its impact, but I'm sure we'll get back to that. I did appreciate the inclusion of an actual audiovisual sample in the work samples. That was nice to see. And it's great that this organization also produces new works regularly. In terms of planning and evaluation, I appreciate that they consider feedback from their participants at several points throughout the program. It's great to get those thoughts along those various stages. I also thought it was commendable that the organization, although it is in the process of adapting a new strategic plan, provided us updates for various components of the previous plan. The budget overall seemed well laid out and healthy. There were a couple of, I think, other expenses that I would have appreciated a little bit more annotation of, but those numbers seem strong and healthy. You have great educational partnerships reaching a broad spectrum of youth, which is very impressive and is doing good work in the community. I'm curious what the organization is doing to bring a diverse population of audiences to the theater itself for main stage productions, kind of outside of the Community Connections program. The Pride Players seem like a great initiative and part of the organization as well. And you all seem to be doing really good boots on the ground advocacy work for yourself and for the arts community in the area.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Secondary reviewer, Mark?
Yes, in terms of audience reach, there's 70,000 people who attended their public performances and 30,000 attended on field trips for kids. I assume most of those are being brought in to the Rose. Excellent show season, different offerings for different ages in your different theaters, and I believe there was a premiere, which is always neat to see. In terms of the program offerings, I thought that was a strength of this submission. Drama classes at the Rose for everyone, and then a competitive Broadway at the Rose, including the Rose Brigade, which is awesome to give kids in Omaha who maybe have, want to devote more time, the chance to excel. Special classes for certain children with disabilities. There's middle school programs at the Omaha Public Schools relating to directing, playwriting, and acting. School field trip performances, in-school residencies, touring shows, including one focused on Nebraska history and famous Nebraskans, which I thought was noteworthy and appreciated. I think anytime that there's tours that can go out to various communities in Nebraska, that's really well received. So that's to the Rose's credit. Long list of other programs. So again, I thought that the program offerings were a clear strength of this proposal. Very good strategic plan, which ends this year. I especially appreciated the column for completed or an update. That was greatly appreciated. Thank you for that. And I also appreciated the comments on the new approach to the new 3-year strategic plan, which I also appreciated. The $4.7 million budget, of which the Rose Foundation is contributing, I think, close to 30%. So that speaks, I think, highly of the community's investment in the Rose, which is a long-term positive for the organization to continue thriving and doing some of the things that were mentioned, including the new Youth Artist Studios. When you combine the ticket sales and the contracted services, which I think for a theater, it's very fair to consider that earned income. They're definitely north of, I think they're in the 40% range, which I think is very good. They've got great foundational, awesome foundational support around town. The corporate giving, maybe that might be an area for possible expansion, but the bottom line, I think, on the budget was it's pretty clear that this organization is thriving and doing a great job of raising money and staying visible. Strong community partnerships, good outreach to underserved communities. And I also appreciated the description of the challenges and the responses to COVID, which for theaters, obviously, along with symphonies and other audience participation, was key. So I had a couple of questions that I'll save for the question, but again, I felt like this was a strong application.
Thank you. Leah?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Mark. This was a strong application. And really what came through and surfaced for me is the value to the community. Not only the longevity that you've been around for 70 years, that shows value and engagement, but then the educational aspect of all of your programming, bringing in 30,000 students for field trips, that's amazing. That type of access is, I think, really important. And again, your offerings for just various audiences, it just really shows how you're being responsive to the community. And it looks like you've done that for a very long time. I would like to know about the touring group as well. But overall, really great work.
Thank you. Maria Laura?
Yes, I agree with all the comments. I really don't have anything more to add. Great quality educational programs for kids. Just so great work. So thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right. Matt, would you like to make any response to some of the questions or things that the panelists mentioned?
No, I mean, we're very appreciative of the affirmation of our work offered in the panelist summaries, and I'm happy to dive in to answer any questions that folks have.
Okay.
I would like to know a little bit more about the touring shows and exactly where those are going and the communities those are impacting across the state and outside of the state. They make a reach beyond state lines.
Yeah, there's actually probably an opportunity with those latter groups you mentioned. These touring shows are in a theater and education model, so they end up having, anywhere from 2 to 4 actors that we'll send out, and they perform in school environments. Silver Cash is something that is focused on financial literacy. It's really fun, actually. Our playwright in residence created a piece. We said, hey, could you make a play that is actually going to address this, very well studied gap in financial literacy that hits around like 4th, 5th grade. And he went and ran that through like kind of a series of sort of silly noir mystery style things. So it feels like it's a spoof, but it's also teaching concepts like budgeting, comparison shopping, that kind of thing. And so that goes to 60 plus classrooms in the metro area. And there probably is a ton of opportunity for us to expand beyond that. That's a project that this last season was supported by First National. And I think, were they willing, or were they, open to allowing us to access other sources of funding that might, make that more of a regional or a statewide endeavor? I think we'd be very open to it because we believe in that project a lot. And it's regularly one of our best surveyed experiences from teachers and kids, because it's a hard topic to make fun and interesting when you first are approaching it, which the piece does. We mentioned Nebraska land as well. Same thing in terms of it really is mostly focused on Omaha area schools, but there's probably quite a bit of opportunity there for us. I think just when you think about the expense of sort of runouts, like outstate, that kind of thing, it probably is resting more on foundation or corporate support to make that possible. The other thing is, because the actors in these shows are full-time teaching artists at the Rose, having them go out and not be available to other classes, in the 4 to 6 to 9 p.m. realm, would mean that we'd have to backfill some of that contract labor. So there's some things about doing this on a more regional or a statewide sort of scope that we would have to figure out. But we're very open to licensing the piece to other groups that might want to do it too. And when we approached a different funder in terms of securing support for Mysterious Case Files of Silver Cash, that was one of the concepts that they were originally interested in, was making that piece sort of something that had perhaps national scope.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, Matt, this is Mark Laughlin. Just 2 questions. First, if I'd be curious as to the the trends in attendance at children's theaters around the country over the last 10 to 15 or 20 years, what you're seeing there. And then number 2, putting aside for the minute the education piece, which obviously you guys are probably leaders around the country in at this point, can you talk about your vision of in the next 10 to 20 years in children's theater from kind of a programming standpoint? Do you see any different kinds of offerings other than just the traditional bring people in for a traditional play or anything like that?
Yeah, so in the last 10 to 15 years, sort of pre-pandemic, the Theater for Young Audiences field was overall on a really intense growth curve. I'm fortunate to be the vice president of the board of Theater for Young Audiences, which is our industry's national service organization. And so we had in 2019 done a field-wide survey, and you were seeing trends from every decade where the number of companies was increasing, and a lot of those were small. There's actually, probably only maybe 20 to 30 living anywhere close to the scope of the Rose, budget-wise. And a lot of those are in larger cities. So that's a really cool thing about this region, that it's made this investment in this company for so long. And the pandemic obviously was very disruptive to a lot of that, but one of the things that I think has sort of been broadly recognized, and this gets to the second part of your question, is that holding sort of jewel box performances as the thing is very, very difficult to execute with really a ton of financial stability. And I think the Rose's model, where the main stages are really a leverage tool for getting kids interested in exploring other ways they might use their voices to change the world. So whether that's a musical theater class, that's great, but also having a kiddo that comes for a full day workshop here that is learning about the story of Anansi the spider for the very first time, hearing something that's Western European based as a folk tale, that might be eye opening to them in a way that feels really, really meaningful. So I think field-wide, the trend is going to be really to create more sort of co-equal sort of structures between education and main stage production work. For us, the biggest, I think, opportunities for growth are in the early learners. This is an area that I would still say we're in the very, very early stages, even though we have a really, really robust set of offerings there. It includes 2 shows in our Hitchcock Theater under normal conditions where kiddos, in a 200-seat theater that maybe is capped at like 80 kids max, you can actually interact, touch the performers. I mean, all of that kind of stuff is just perfect for where those kids are at developmentally. And in the last 2 years, even during the pandemic, this musical theater training program called Little Rosie's has taken off. I mean, daycares and a lot of the preschools that then are associated with OPS, Head Starts, those facilities where we give it for free, are leaping at the chance to have intensive musical theater instruction for the pre-K crowd. And we're just scratching the surface of where that opportunity exists in this community. And so that probably forms the basis for, I can imagine 10 years from now, I'm talking to you and we're doing 4 to 6 pre-K specific professional productions in the Hitchcock, maybe 2 that are touring, and we're working with 100 plus daycares or early learning centers or preschools on a weekly, if not monthly basis. I could see that being the future at the Rose. And we love that because I think once kids are in the habit of experiencing theater, expressing themselves using theatrical forms, not only are they probably going to be more likely to be attendees and participants in our various productions and classes and that kind of thing, but the good stuff of sort of feeling like their voice is valid in the world is work that's going to be happening at that early age. And then the Rose has a role in their elementary school years of returning to validate that for them, on a yearly basis, if not more. So it's not just exciting to me strategically, in terms of the growth of the organization, but from a mission standpoint, that would probably be a vision of radical success for us.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're at a point then, unless anyone has a burning question, that we will thank Matt very much for his time and his good comments. And if the panelists will look at your scores and see if you want to do any revisions, and just again give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and then we'll move on to our next applicant. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you so much for the time and the consideration.
Thank you, Janelle.
I'm not seeing Kenneth on the screen. Are you done, Ken? Or
Yeah,
oh,
I'm ready
there
to
you
move
go.
on.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on. Our next applicant is Omaha Symphony Orchestra.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, would you please introduce yourself and your position with the organization? And then you have 2 minutes to give a brief summary synopsis, at which point then the reviewers will include their comments.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. I'm Jennifer Baumgarten. I'm the president and CEO of the Omaha Symphony. I'm here with Liz Kendall-Weiser, who is our director of education and community engagement. The Omaha Symphony is a full-time professional orchestra with an annual budget of around $9 million. We support 42 full-time musicians with salaries and benefits, as well as 28 part-time musicians. Over 38% of our budget is spent directly on salaries for Omaha Symphony musicians, as well as benefits. Our musicians live and work in Omaha and really serve as the backbone of our musical community here. They're not playing with the Omaha Symphony. They are teaching lessons. They are performing in churches and schools and all over our community. 87% of our budget is spent directly on programming, which is actually higher than the industry average of 79%. We reach over 125,000 Nebraskans annually. We feel like the Omaha Symphony program has something for everyone. So not only do we do the classical programming, but there is pops, there's rocks, there's movies, there's family programming. In addition, over 30% of our programs are in our education and community engagement arena. We work with over 300 schools each year, serving nearly 30,000 students annually in pre-pandemic times, as well as community partners, including the Omaha Public Library, Autism Action Partnerships, El Museo Latino, Completely Kids, Boys and Girls Clubs, and many more. Our strategic vision is to be an adaptable, innovative, relevant resource for our community and to foster inclusion. During the pandemic, we really embraced a research and development mindset, allowing us to learn new skills, including our digital initiative, which to date includes 2 WOT broadcasts, which is our local NBC affiliate, to over 125,000 Nebraskans each year. The creation of a virtual classroom, which tripled our educational reach, and is also allowing us to reimagine our concert experience by introducing technology to the concert hall. We're committed to being a responsive resource for our community and our changing demographics. We created a new program called Forte to support these efforts. Forte's goal is really to create collaborative experiences across our community, reflect Omaha on our stage, and ensure access to the arts for all. And we're seeking new ways to participate in activating the new spaces in Omaha that are coming online, including the Jean Leahy Mall, the Steelhouse Omaha, as well as the new library vision. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts and answering your questions.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's see. The primary reviewer is Kenneth.
Well, good morning, y'all. I would say the symphony overall has a great, healthy balance of artistic programming designed to meet the goals of their mission and engage community members. And wow, do you guys get a lot done in one year? That is really impressive programming. I found the website to be particularly impressive and informative. So I wanted to thank you all for including that website link as a work sample. I think that's a great way to give panelists a good overview of your organization without having to travel there. So I got a really good understanding of the diversity of programming that goes on year to year. I think your efforts to evaluate and track programming seems to be strong and well thought out. I appreciated that the organization evaluates programming in a way that is multifaceted. I especially liked learning that the staff has a debrief amongst themselves after activities. It's really good to think of those things both externally and internally. The organization has a really good, strong, diverse budget, great ticket sales and individual contributions. It seems healthy. I would have appreciated a little bit more detail for line items like music projects or development expenses, but I am a numbers person, so I do like a well annotated budget. I think the organization has strong leadership in place with both folks that have been at the organization for a while and have strong roots in place and staff that has a fresher perspective. So that's a good mixed bag. In terms of outreach and engagement, I like that the application includes some quantitative data provided and speaks directly to economic impact as well as community impact. So that's wonderful, showing that the organization both impacts the community well as the economic industry in the area. I think you all have a great reach within the state and outside. I would have appreciated a letter of support from one of those outside community leaders or members, but the ones that were provided were nice. And I do note a focus on those educational programs for K through 12 students. So I understand wanting to include those letters. I think there are some really great partnerships in place, and I can see that you all are working on this, but would encourage you to continue to seek out new audiences and diversify the community development through those partnerships.
Thanks, Kenneth. Mark, you're the secondary reviewer.
Yes, in terms of programmatic offerings, they offer over 50 main stage concerts in 6 series, which is quite a bit. and wonderful, and including Pop's family movies. I noticed they also have Mozart Symphony Number 40 coming up on their slate for this next year. They bring in guest artists from around the country. They have music education courses for grade school, junior high, and high schools, and 35% of the time was spent in the schools and on community outreach, which I thought was excellent. I much appreciated their strategic plan. There were excellent and specific goals that were tracked quarterly on that, and thank you for submitting that part. They've had, in terms of fundraising, annual increases, double digits in the 3 years before COVID. They're trying to have a significant increase to endowment funds by I think the number in the submissions were 39 million. I'd be interested as an update as to that. Their endowment covers in excess of 25% of their total budget, which again speaks to the health of the organization, and you'll be able to weather some storms if the stock market goes down, for example. So again, that speaks to your fundraising efforts and relationships within the community. You all, and you know this probably more than me, but you have a very impressive board list. You've done an awesome job of that. Great representation from around the community. Excellent community partnerships, excellent community outreach.
Thank you, Mark. Maria Laura, comments?
Yes, I support everything that Kenneth and Mark said. And I would just add that I was very impressed with the organization. I think they have a really reasonable budget for the level of activity that they do. And they have strong subscription sales. And I'm definitely coming for the Harry Potter concerts. So
Terrific. Leah?
Yes, yes, it's really, you do have a rather large budget, and you are doing a lot with that. So that's really great to see. One thing that stood out for me is your virtual classroom. I think that's just amazing, and that it's great that you're going to continue to further your reach, that you're not, we are still in a pandemic, but I think we've all discovered the value of expanding our reach virtually, particularly to those who can't make it to our programs. So that's wonderful. I love the strong allocation of your budget for your musicians' salaries and their benefits. And I like that in your strategic plan that one of your points is to strengthen your programs that serve the community. So always keeping that top of mind. So really happy to see that. So great proposal.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, do you want to respond to anything they've said or ask them any questions about anything they've said before we just kind of turn it open?
Sure, I'm happy to. Just to answer your question, Kenneth, on some detail in the music projects line. So you see kind of 5 areas in the Omaha Symphony budget: an office admin line, a fundraising line, a marketing line, and then music projects and music admin. They kind of go hand in hand. So the music admin line includes all the musicians' salaries. These would be kind of considered the overhead of the organization, right? The expenses that we have regardless of what we put on the stage. So that is musician salaries, is staff salaries, is conductor salaries, and all the benefits that go with those, as well as things like instrument insurance. The music projects line then becomes all of the programming expense. This is guest artist fees. This is our rent for the Holland Center. This is all those things that when we put on a program come into play. Security at the hall, those kinds of things. So that's a little more detail for you on the music projects side.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As far as some letters of support from outside Omaha, we've been really fortunate to be able to serve our broader state, Nebraska community. Unfortunately, the pandemic did have us not doing touring recently. One of, frankly, my favorite letters of support that we got that we didn't include, it was a thank you letter from one of the teachers in COZAD. She actually participated in our Educator as Maestro program, which is an opportunity for our high school instructors to be have some instruction time on the podium with the Omaha Symphony in conducting from our maestros here. And she participated in that program, but then was very active in our virtual classroom. And so she wrote a really lovely letter to us just saying, thank you so much for everything that is available to us here, particularly through the pandemic. So it's probably one we should have included, Kenneth. It was not necessarily a letter of support, but it was certainly a thank you for her. Thank you so much for the comments around our work in the community engagement arena. This is something the Omaha Symphony has been doing really for a very long time. In fact, as Suzanne probably remembers, I was the Omaha Symphony's first director of education and community partnerships, and that was in 2004. So that has been something that we have been passionate about for a long time. And just recently, we put in place a new initiative that we have called Forte, which is all about amplifying the strengths of our community. It has three sort of primary areas of focus. So one is creating opportunities for our community to come together around music. Another is to make sure that we are reflecting Omaha on our stage. And a third is to make sure that we are ensuring access. And so all of that falls into the work with our various partners. A great example of a Forte program was our recent work with the Autism Action Partnership, where we did a program for adults with autism and for children with autism. Another is a program that we are looking to do in the Jean Leahy Mall in September, which will really be a celebration of Omaha and all of the cultures that make up our city. So Forte is something we're really passionate about. Mark, you referenced the endowment. So the endowment, with the stock market going down recently, the endowment continues to grow, and to your point, has created a tremendous amount of stability for the organization. I know many of our colleagues around the country were not able to stand by their musicians through the pandemic. Their finances simply didn't allow them to, when the earned income side of the organization, went to almost nothing. The Omaha Symphony was part of only 23% of the orchestras in the country that actually played through the pandemic for live audiences. But we also made a commitment to taking care of our musicians and our team. And really the endowment created the stability for the organization to do that. It is currently valued just under $50 million. And it has another, I believe, $11 million in commitments that will come in over the course of the next few years. So again, to your point, creating the stability to help make sure that we can come out of the pandemic successfully. Liz, do you want to speak a little bit more to virtual classroom and kind of what we've seen and what our plans are?
Absolutely. I mean, initially, we dove into the virtual classroom space out of necessity. No one was, doing field trips, and many of our school districts were learning from home. And so that pendulum swung fully into that space. This year, we saw a little bit of a fatigue in that way. And so we continued serving our outstate Nebraska schools, primarily with our Mission Imagination, which is our pre-K to third grade program. And then again, our Concerts for Youth, which is 4th through 6th grade. So we did see enrollment there across rural communities as we welcomed local schools back to in-person. And so now we're really in a really lovely space of working with educators in tandem to figure out what their needs are moving forward. How can we provide kind of a hybrid experience for those who are able to travel into our hall? And then how can we continue to tailor programs that are specific to those smaller school districts where, for example, there may be a single music teacher providing music instruction across all disciplines K-12, and their needs are going to be very different from our colleagues in OPS. So we're in a space where we're able to tailor those offerings. So we were able to capture some new learning library videos, for example, this spring that we're sending out to educators to kind of get a test run and figure out how we can expand those things, which are available on our YouTube channel for free for musicians of any age and skill set, as well as some of our chamber programs that are partnerships with No More Empty Pots, for example. So marrying music with, in this case, agricultural education, excuse me, and looking at harmony and music and how that kind of relates to companion planting. So tying things together in a new and interesting way. So I'm really looking forward to growing our virtual classroom and adapting it to classroom needs.
Great. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh,
Did
I
you
was
have,
gonna say, were there other things that we missed that any of you would like to learn more about?
any other comments or questions from the panelists?
I would just say thank you for those explanations. Those were very helpful and detailed.
Okay. Okay, well then hearing none, thank you very much, Jennifer and Liz, for all of your time. And we will then conclude this part of it and give the panelists a few minutes to look at their scores and do any revisions that they want to make before we move, well, before we move to a break, actually. But let's get the scoring done first. Again, thank you, Jennifer and Liz.
Thank you very much.
Sure, bye-bye. Thumbs up when you're done. Okay, it looks like we're probably ready. Then we have a 5-minute break. Is that correct?
Actually till a little bit before 10:15. The next one's scheduled at 10:15.
Okay.
So we have a nice ice break.
You have a nice 10-minute break there, so 10 or 12 minutes. All right, we will reconvene then in another 10 to 12 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, Katie. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Doing well. It's an exciting day. Hello, Stephen. How you doing?
Hello. Nice to see you.
Good seeing you again. All of our friends are coming back online.
There everybody is. Busy day for you all.
It is.
All right. And I think we're all back.
We're all back?
I believe so. Yes. Yes.
Okay, then we are reconvened for the second session of the morning. Welcome back, everybody. Omaha Community Playhouse is our next applicant. So would you introduce yourself and your position, and then you have 2 minutes to give us a synopsis summary before the panelists will do their review. Okay, who's going to begin?
Well, I will begin. First of all, thank you so much to everybody for taking time to meet with us and to review our application. I'm very honored to be in front of this great panel. My name is Katie Broman. I'm the Executive Director at the Omaha Community Playhouse. I've been in my role for about 5.5 years. Stephen?
Good morning. My name is Stephen Santa, and I'm the Artistic Director here at the Omaha Community Playhouse. Thank you for having us this morning.
Yeah, so just a little bit about the Playhouse. We are the biggest community theater in the country, and we're 97 years old, which we're very proud of. Biggest we determined by budget size. We produce 10 shows annually, which includes our annual production of A Christmas Carol, which is certainly a favorite among the community. We've been doing that for over 45 years, and we're really known for our high production values. So, you know, beautiful costumes, big sets, great shows in general, and we're very proud of what we do. We have all community actors, for the most part, that perform in our shows, and made the decision this year for the first time in our 97-year history to start uniformly compensating performers and also full run crew. So that was a big change for us, but really our commitment to the community didn't change with that operational change. So we still cast locally, try to hire directors locally, and hopefully are having a big impact on the community in that way. We also have an education wing for adults and students. And of course, we have classes and camps, but we also have this amazing apprenticeship program that has been in partnership with Metropolitan Community College for about 25 years, in which students get hands-on training in the technical areas of theater, and they can enter right into the workforce. We're of course approaching our 100th anniversary and really excited about that. In the last few years, we have also really been focusing on inclusion and how we can create a sense of belonging for the entire community. And we have a lot of amazing programs that we're working on currently that I would love to tell you more about, but I only have 5 seconds left. So thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Playhouse.
Good. Well, and you may have a chance to do that as we get into our discussion. So let's move to our first reviewer, who is the primary reviewer is Kenneth.
Yes, good morning. So I'll start by saying that I really appreciate that the organization has started offering the compensation to performance and crew. I hope that stipend can continue to grow because that is really invaluable to those artists. I also loved reading about the alternative programming series. I think giving local artists the chance to show off or workshop their work within the community is a great asset. I would be curious to know if any of those one night only events transition to becoming a part of a full season production. I think the sensory friendly mobile theater is a great initiative. So well done in thinking about accessibility for your community members. And that you all seem to have a really robust and diverse season ahead of you, which was nice to read about. I also really enjoyed taking a look at the organization's website, and I found that was helpful in getting a bird's eye view of the organization and its long 97-year history. In terms of planning and evaluation, I appreciated the organization's openness in your ongoing DEIA efforts. I would encourage you all to continue to expand evaluation processes for those programs and services. You know, word of mouth feedback is so valuable, but tangible measures and data building will also help in the long run to evaluate those services. The organization's new artistic director, Stephen, has a really strong background in the development of local talent, which is really exciting for the Playhouse. It seems like there is a lot of newer staff and there have been some transitions in the past year, but I was really impressed by the biographies provided, and you all seemed like you are moving forward and the organization is in good hands. There are some other line items in the budget that were not quite explained, which I would have found a little bit helpful. From the application, I also got a sense that there is somewhat of a challenge in bringing new audiences to the Playhouse. I would be curious to know more about the organization's marketing strategy or other efforts to reach outside community members. I do see that there was a hiring of a director of inclusion and community engagement, which is great, but I think I wanted a little bit more information about direct plans to address those needs. I would also encourage the organization to continue developing those strong community partnerships that will really help diversify those audiences. I do see some really strong education efforts in place, which are great and impactful. And I also really appreciated the actionable list of efforts made to raise awareness among state and local policymakers.
Thank you, Kenneth. Would you
Okay.
like me to
No,
address? Okay.
no, we'll wait. Yeah, we'll let all the reviewers go through and then you have a chance for response. Okay. Thanks, Katie. Okay, Maria Laura.
The theater people are always ready to jump in. We're always
right.
like, okay, it's my turn. My turn. React. I was pleased to be the second reader for this application, an excellent application. My first comment is Omaha Community Playhouse understood the assignment. They really did. Excellent programming, including sensory-friendly programs, as Kenneth touched upon. They're doing 10 main stage productions, and they're all ambitious shows. Like, all of these shows are like, they're doing In the Heights, they're doing Fences, they're doing The Cake. I'm like, wow, like, how big is your budget? It's not, I mean, it's like $5 or $4 million?
4.5.
$4.5 million. And so you're doing quite a lot. Strong evaluation program across the board that includes surveys, metrics, feedback opportunities. It was really well thought out. The fundraising plan I found to be very solid. You just wrapped up a 5-year plan that was interrupted by COVID, like everybody else. And now you're looking to establish a new strategic plan for the next 5 years. I thought you had wonderful education and outreach programs, and you're reaching more than 115,000 people every year. And again, as I want to echo Kenneth's comment, I'm so glad that you're hiring so many people, both on stage and backstage. So great job.
Good. Leah?
Well, yes, I echo what Maria Laura is saying. In terms of the compensation for your artists and your crews, that type of commitment, 10 shows per year, that really speaks volumes. So kudos to you all for doing that. I really appreciate your relationship with the Metropolitan Community College. I think that type of inclusion with an educational institution like that is very important. It speaks to your focus on inclusion and access, which seems to really be on the right track, like your mobile program. And as Kenneth said, hiring your director of community engagement. So overall, a really great proposal, and really does, to me, reflect value for your community. So I really appreciate that. I agree also with Kenneth's comment about advocacy. You had a long list of protocols there, which are probably serving you well. So that's really great too.
Okay, Mark?
I have a conflict with the Playhouse, so just so for the record, I am not commenting, I am not voting, and I have not spoken to any of my fellow panelists regarding this application.
All right. And now, Katie, if you would like to respond to any of those questions or comments that they made.
Thank you. And thank you for your questions and comments. You know, in my tenure here in this position, I very distinctly remember the last time I was in front of the NAC panel 3 years ago. And there was an interesting, I guess, juxtaposition in that conversation among the panelists, because one person had the comment that, the Playhouse really could be doing more with the community, more with outreach, more, programs in that way. And a different panelist said, I totally disagree, because everything that the Playhouse does is with the community. It's just within the building and maybe not as much at other places in the community. And so I appreciate your comments so much today, because I feel like those reflect our intentional growth to serve the community in more ways than just producing our shows. So thank you for that. Kenneth, you had a great question about building audiences and marketing. And that's something that all performing arts, I think, struggle with and grapple with. And my career before being an executive director was in marketing, arts marketing, here at the Playhouse and at Opera Omaha. And I feel like I learned a great deal during that time. And my opinion is the best way to bring in new audiences isn't necessarily how you advertise or even how you communicate your message, but it's with programming. And I've seen that time and time again. And we saw that this year with the Color Purple. So the Color Purple was a very big success for us this year, artistically, with the community, financially. And we saw 47% of the audience who came to the Color Purple were new patrons to us. That's huge. We call them new to file. So perhaps they'd been at the Playhouse before, but they hadn't purchased a ticket through our database. Maybe they came with a friend or something like that, and they weren't in our database, but they were new to file. And that is huge. The community really rallied behind that show. And as you can probably imagine, the demographic looked a little differently than what our normal Playhouse audience is. And so now it's our opportunity to try to retain those new to file patrons. And we have a lot of strategies for that. We work with a company called TRG out of Colorado Springs. They're a consulting company for arts organizations. And there's a lot of direct mail, email, and programming strategies to try to get, those new to file patrons to come back as a multi-ticket buyer and then eventually as a subscriber. We do definitely still push subscriptions, because if you can get somebody to subscribe, it's a lower acquisition fee or cost, and then the retention cost is extremely low. And so that's really important to us. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. Do many arts and culture organizations have a long way to go? Unfortunately, yes. But I think that you're meeting with a lot of amazing organizations today. And if we all continue to do our work, we're going to bolster the arts and culture community as a whole in Omaha, and just, I think, contribute to the other organizations' successes. Thank you all for your compliments on the actor pay. That wasn't a decision we made lightly. We started considering that back in 2017, which was my first year here. And we had a small group. We did a lot of research, a lot of debating. And I used to kind of tell myself a lie in this area unknowingly. I said things, I wanted to implement this, but I said, yes, but is paying actually inclusive? Because as you pay people, opportunities might decrease, right? If you have a budget and you only can cast 20 people in your budget, but you'd like to Cast 25, that's taking opportunities away from 5 people. And I was a little hung up on that. And really during the pandemic and during after the death of George Floyd, I realized I was feeding myself a lie, because I thought community theater at its core is inclusive, but it's only inclusive for those who can participate, who have the means to participate, who can afford the transportation to participate, who can afford the childcare to participate. And our fee that we implemented this year is modest, but hopefully will reduce some barriers for some folks to be able to participate. And the goal is to certainly grow that over time. But we also don't want to change our programming and shrink our cast and shrink our shows because we're paying. And so we're starting in an area where the fee is modest, but it has been a big budget expense addition. And we're hoping to fundraise the whole amount and again, hope to grow that over time. And the last thing that I'll touch on, and then Stephen may have some things and open up to other questions, is also thank you for the notes about the advocacy during the pandemic. Advocacy was, to our local politicians and policymakers was a lot more important. And we saw some amazing results, especially with the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. The Playhouse participated in some of the initial awareness campaigns around that when it was still the Save Our Stages bill. And we just could not have been more thrilled with that federal relief funding, because it just really made a huge impact for us. It came a little late, and that was challenging as we, that year plus that we didn't have it, but it helped in a tremendous way.
Stephen, do you have some comments you want to make?
Yeah, thanks. Kenneth, I wanted to comment quickly because you had asked about the alternative programming. And, I think that program is kind of transitioning now to have a more focus on local playwrights and cultivating their works. And I think the hopes of that program is that we can really take the time and care to develop a show or multiple shows that eventually the pipeline can end up with it having a full premiere on the Playhouse stage. So I think that's the kind of trend where that program is going to transition to.
Great. And I had a question about the touring program. I think we saw that the Christmas Carol is a touring show, but are there any other shows that tour in the area, and where specifically does that show get taken to?
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
You can take it. Okay. I was going to talk about, so the Christmas Carol is going back on the road this coming holiday season. And, there's a discussion happening now as to what the Nebraska Theater Caravan can look like, what sort of audiences we should be serving with our touring. And now that we have this sensory-friendly mobile theater, that is going to become part of the Nebraska Theater Caravan touring aspect, because that show is going to go directly to families' homes, go to community events, festivals, museums, schools, hospitals, along those lines. So that is a kind of new way to look at touring and hitting sort of different venues and different communities than a traditional touring to theaters across the state and across the country.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Well, then I guess we are concluded with the applicants from the Omaha Community Playhouse. Katie and Stefan, thank you so very much for your time and all. And if the rest of you would, panelists would take a few minutes to check your scores and do any revisions, and just let me know when you're ready. We're well ahead of time. Oh, thanks, Kenneth.
Sherry, can I take just a moment here to inform our virtual audience about a conflict of interest? A conflict of interest means that Mark will not score or have any comment when it comes to finalizing today's results. nor will he do the same when he is participating at the quarterly, but our board meeting in June 7th. So he will remain totally separate from the Omaha Community Playhouse application and subsequent funding.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. I see we are ahead of schedule. So we have a few minutes before, about 10 minutes before we have the next one, unless they're in line or.
The applicants are both here, but we always ask you guys if you're ready to move forward.
Are you ready? Yeah, I think everybody is if they're in line. We don't have, do we need to worry about keeping to schedule because there might be somebody from the outside who should be watching and doesn't come in on time, or are we okay because we have the panelists and we have the applicants? Is that sufficient?
I think we're fine.
Okay.
Actually, they're kind of estimated times, so I think we'll be fine. And this is something we realized when we were kind of planning together yesterday, and we're going to kind of implement, I think, a little different procedure on this particular point in the future. But for right now, we should be fine.
Okay, so then we're ready to move on to the Omaha Conservatory of Music. And who is here for that?
We have Ruth Mines and Mark Kressel.
Okay, would you please introduce yourselves and your position and give us a 2-minute summary synopsis before we go to the panelist comments, and then we'll come back for discussion.
Hello, my name is Ruth Mines. I'm the Executive Director for the Omaha Conservatory of Music, and I have with me Mark Kressel. He's the Director of Development. And I wanted to start by thanking the Nebraska Arts Council for playing such an enormous role in our growth over the last 3 years. This year we hit a landmark. We have over 1,000 students that are enrolled on campus in our programming, and that makes nearly 2,500 families across the state. That includes String Sprouts, our Winnebago reservation program, summer programs, other programming that we have going. To accommodate this demand, we've of course hired a number of wonderful teachers from across the country to join us, and our board of directors has just embarked upon a master planning process to expand our current facility because of course we are packed in like sardines at this point. So we have 2 pillars that we think about when we're planning our innovative programming. Those are accessibility and excellence. And an example would be the majority of our students are age 4 to 18, but we are now have a fast growing programs in the 0 to 4 category with Tuneful Tots. And then we're initiating some senior living music opportunities. So we're really excited about those for the future. Our biggest collaboration is with Sprouts and the Symphony. And our biggest, when it was one event, we had to split it into 2 events because it got very large. We brought together 1,000 primarily underserved kids to play with the Omaha Symphony. There was an audience of about 5,000 at Baxter Arena. We feel we've positioned ourselves to be thought leaders in music education for the country. We have teachers excited to come learn about Sprouts and take it back to their community. And, we even have an international Sprout site starting in the country of Panama in the fall. So we're very appreciative of all the help you've given us and over the years, and we thank you for your consideration of this application.
Great, thanks, Ruth. Okay, primary reviewer is Maria Laura.
Yes, so thank you for a great application. I'm just gonna be looking this way so I can read my comments so I don't leave anything out. So the conservatory has, oh wait, did I scroll down? Sorry. Going back up to the top of my comments. The conservatory is a conservatory school program primarily for children and youth, and they do have programs for adults as well. The programs and services narrative really focused on the artistic faculty primarily, which seems to be stellar. However, I think in the future, maybe you want to include a little bit more of an overall sense of the programs offered by the conservatory in that section specifically. The schedule of events was very helpful in providing these details, and further on in the application, the information is absolutely there. So that's just a suggestion for the future. I also wondered which of the programs were free and which they charge for and how much you charge. I did note that the Sprouts in the Park annual event is free and open to the public, which is fantastic. The programs really offered a robust everything from music lessons, guitar lessons, repertoire piano, strings, percussion, classes for everyone, including a composer club, a music theater workshop, and a rock lab. I found it all fascinating, great programming. The work samples were some links to the website and some very compelling videos, including one about a student with a disability. He's missing part of an arm, and the conservatory went above and beyond to help the student to secure a modified violin for him so he could play. And it's a very compelling story. So thanks for doing that. There's also a brief and endearing news report about Tuneful Tots, their program for parents and toddlers that they join together for music sessions, which is just an example of the great programming that they offer for everyone. Under the evaluation process section, the conservatory talks about how they evaluate the students by testing them in theory knowledge and their work in the recitals every year, and how they're graded on performance and progress, which is all stellar. They also mention that they provide teaching workshops for the artists faculty as professional development opportunities. And they talk about how they review the spring sprouts every year and the participant and educator surveys that they conduct. So these are all good elements to evaluation, but I didn't get a sense of the broader approach to evaluation, from overall programming. So just a note for the future, but all good. And I think that the evaluation section just could be stronger if it had more of like a across the board approach in terms of how you evaluate your programs holistically. And in terms of planning and evaluation, the conservatory has a very strong strategic plan that they developed with a consultant through 2025 with input from staff, the artist faculty, and board members. And there were three primary goals. They have three primary goals. The first is to provide access to music excellence, enrich lives, build life skills, and strengthen families. And third, educational opportunities. I think they excel at all three things. It's a very, the list that they provided is a very highly summarized list of the strategic imperatives. I think it would have been good to see a little bit of, what's underneath that, the actual objectives and tactics, which I'm sure you have, but I didn't see it in there. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed more of a decision-making tool than a strategic plan. A very useful tool, I thought it was, good to include, but again, I would have liked to have seen some more visionary goals, just to understand where the conservatory would like to go with their future programming. They have a very strong contributed income plan, a full-time director of development, I see Mark here, and a full-time grants writer. And they have most impressively completed a successful $19 million capital campaign for their headquarters. I really appreciated the description of the development matrix that they use to track prospects and grant opportunities. They have a very strong individual donor program called the Principal Players. It's a giving circle with an annual minimum gift of $1,000. The artistic staff are all qualified professionals with impressive backgrounds. They have, 18 board members that are a mix of business and community leaders, including the executive director of the conservatory and 2 additional staff. So perhaps in the future, you might want to address in the narrative, maybe a conflict of interest with having 3 paid staff members on the board. Just something, of note for the future. They have a $4 million budget, which more than half of that goes to staff salaries. The administration salaries are carried in the administrative section. I think that probably should go under personnel in the budget. I'm not sure, the council is probably best to counsel you on how to structure it, but it just seemed weird to me, but I figured it out. It would have just been good to know how many staff you have and how many in the faculty. I mean, I realize the level of programming that you probably have a lot of staff. So it would have been good to like have that somewhere. And maybe it is and I missed it. So if I did, please let me know. I didn't see any income listed under corporate and government grants, which none at all. Felt a little odd. So correct me if I'm wrong. But they do pull in $1.4 million in foundation funding alone, which is very impressive. And their largest source of income are tuition payments and ticket sales. In 2021, they awarded over $130,000 worth of scholarships and financial aid to students. And I'd be interested to know how much they charge the other students for services and how many scholarship students there are. For fiscal year 2020, the conservatory is showing 17 million in assets according to the audited financials, primarily because the building, right? The building is like $15 million. Overall, the budget seems very reasonable and the organization is fiscally sound. They have strong partnerships with the community, with schools, community organizations, and specifically the Omaha Public School District. They collaborate with the Omaha Symphony, producing the annual event. Ruth was talking about that, the Sprouts event, and Sprouts in the Symphony, where kids get the chance to play next to professional players. It's just really heartwarming, and I'm sure it's a wonderful event. They reach 60% of their students on off-campus programs. I would have loved more information about what you consider to be your outreach programs. I know it's a lot of information, and I'm well aware that the character count in these applications are very small. So sometimes that's why the panel is like, we want more information. And you're like, where am I going to put it? You know, I understand there's a limit. So I take that suggestion with a grain of salt. One collaboration particular that stands out for me is that they have a partnership with the St. Augustine Indian Mission to provide recorder voice and guitar lessons to their students. And the conservatory also works with the Winnebago elders to preserve Winnebago tribal music from past generations. And this is the kind of heritage project that is very compelling. And it's a great example about how cultural institutions can lift up diverse communities. So I really applaud you for that. Regarding audience development, I didn't really feel like I got a sense of what you're doing to attract audiences. Again, it could do with the character count limits, but there's a lot of detail about the great outreach efforts that you're doing in the community and the programs that are free and open to the public. And your touring program, the Frontier Strings, which is a group of students that perform at public events throughout the year, and they have a summer tour. And the conservatory has plans to install a camera system that's going to allow streaming of performances and recitals, which I think is fantastic, especially for grandparents, older relatives, and for the participants, and also people who maybe have a physical disability that don't allow them to be present in the recital halls, either due to physical limitation or maybe it's a risk of COVID-19 infection. So I think it's great that they're working on that. The conservatory's efforts in terms of educating policymakers at the local and state level seem to be right on target, including with the executive director participating in state arts advocacy meetings on a regular basis, and the development director meeting with elected officials. And they also send letters every year to state leaders. I appreciate all of the work that you're doing with DEIA and everything that's being planned and talked about. I really encourage this organization to include demographic information in their application for the future. So I think it would be helpful to know for the panel what percentage of your students, for example, are Black, Latino, Latinx, Indigenous, et cetera. Overall, fantastic application and a great organization. So I know I went on quite a bit, but there was a lot to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth, you're the second reviewer.
Yes, and I think Maria Lara hit a lot of my points. So thank you. And I'm sorry if I'm a little repetitive. I do think that the programs and classes offered at the organization, they do seem robust and fulfilling, led by great talents and educators. I also appreciated The work samples that were provided helped to give a great sense of this organization and their educational and community reaches. I appreciate that this organization considers measures from its own faculty and provides development where needed, giving those instructors and your own staff the tools that they need to fulfill the organization's mission. String Sprouts in particular is very well evaluated on several levels, which really shows the commitment to education. I also thought it was wonderful to see that the organization has a board that is generous and active. The outreach programs are much needed in the community and offer a great service to families and students who may not have the opportunity for this musical instruction otherwise. You obviously have really great, strong community connections in the work that you do, and the educational partnerships reflect that. Frontier Strings is a great initiative and an effort to continue expanding the outreach, so I applaud that. And I also applaud the live streaming that will happen for those performances, which will also have a great effect and hopefully encourage more audiences to visit in person.
Great. Leah? Leah? Can you hear me? Leah, Miles? Is she frozen? She looks like it's frozen. Let's go to Mark. Do you have any comments, Mark?
Briefly, I really appreciated the descriptions on the string sprouts. I would be interested in hearing any more details on the future master plan that was referenced earlier.
Okay. Leah, are you back with us? Well, we'll wait. Meanwhile, Ruth, Mark.
Just jump back in, Sherry.
Oh, is Leah back in?
I'm back. I apologize.
No, that's okay. When you didn't move, you were frozen. Do you have any comments?
I do. This was a great proposal, and I really share a lot of the same sentiments as the other panelists. What really stood out to me was your community engagement programs and your work in the community. So your work with the St. Augustine School in Winnebago, the String Sprouts program. I love that you're partnering with senior centers as well, just really creating that access and inclusion for all. So that was really what was most compelling to me. I also have some concerns about staff being on the board. This really mingles management and governance. So I think that can create some conflicts and perhaps not the best practice. I love that you bring in international artists and guest artist faculty. That's really wonderful. Just to have, again, for Nebraskans and perhaps beyond, to have access to those artists. So overall, really, really great work.
Great. Okay, Ruth and Mark, if you would like to address any of the things that have come out or answer any of the questions, it's all yours.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to the board of directors. That may have been included. It may have been confusing in how it was written. The staff members that attend are voted by the faculty as faculty representatives. They're non-voting members. We wanted to make sure the faculty had a voice at the table. And of course, I attend and I am a non-voting member. So the staff members that are there have been voted by the faculty and do not vote.
Okay. What about any of the other things that you might want to mention?
The only other thing that I would say is it's really helpful to hear what more detailed information you would like included, because we can certainly do that. And, we try to gather demographics and we try to gather those kinds of things, what percentage are under in poverty that we're serving and on our scale. So we'll make sure that we include that in the future because that's really helpful to get that feedback. So I appreciate that.
And to answer a couple of questions that came up, demographics and Sprouts, for example, we are not provided, the racial information is voluntary. And but income information is not. And 88% of the children in string sprouts live in families that fall below 200% of the poverty guideline. And so that is a focus of ours. On the evaluation side of Sprouts, we brought in this doctor that does behavioral and educational analysis. And what she found, which was I found most interesting, is that the greatest lift that they found among Sprout students was in vocabulary growth. In standard academic testing, there are levels that they talk about, and one of them is extraordinary progress in that area. And we were at 4 times that number in vocabulary growth with string sprouts. And these are kids that are low income, who from an academic standpoint kind of start a little bit behind the starting line as opposed to their peers. And vocabulary is probably the single most important element of education because it allows you to understand everything else. And so that was highly significant to us that they tested at 4 times what the education system determined as highly significant growth. And then also something was brought up on corporate and government grants. We did just receive, and this is the 3rd year in a row that we've received recognition from the National Endowment of the Arts, one of 4 independent nonprofits in the state to receive that designation. And that was for our String Sprouts program. And then aside from NAC, we do get some funding from the Douglas County Commission Visitors Bureau. And I don't know why that wasn't the finance stuff we hand off to our finance people. They don't trust me with numbers. So we hand it off to them and allow them to do that. But those are the only 2 at this point, by the way, aside from NAC, is the Douglas County Commission and the National Endowment of the Arts.
Thanks. All the comments, very helpful. Thank you.
Panelists, are there other things you'd like them to talk about? Any other questions? Okay, well then I guess we will thank Ruth and Mark for their time, and panelists can go ahead and look at the scores and see if you want to make any adjustments. And then we'll move on to the next applicant. Thank you, Ruth and Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, thumbs up. I got one from Mark. Okay, then we're ready to move on. And Mike, did you say that Bema Center is in the wings?
Chris Cook is in the waiting room. We were going to see if he's going to be joined by anybody else, but otherwise he's here.
Okay.
And Josh, if you want to just go ahead and let everybody know whether he's going to join us. Oh, okay. Chris has come into the room, so it looks like we're ready to move on.
Chris, do you have anyone joining you, or are you doing this?
He's still coming in. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, I believe he's with us now. Chris, are you there? There he is.
Hey there, everyone.
Hi, Chris. Are you having anyone join you, or are you going solo on this?
I am flying solo this morning.
Perfect. Well, we will then go ahead and you introduce yourself, what your position is, and then you've got 2 minutes to give us that quick synopsis before the panelists give their review, and then you'll have time to come back for responses.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm Chris Cook, the Executive Director of Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts. I've been with the organization for 7 years now, and I am a Floridian, but I've been in this part of the country for a long time, and so have the wardrobe to handle the winters. Having been at Bemis Center for 7 years now, and been a strong advocate for the arts in Nebraska and in the region, and thinking a little bit about the application that we submitted for this round of the basic support grants, I felt there are many ways to drop into this conversation and to provide a 2-minute introductory, if you will, on behalf of Bemis Center. And knowing the foundation of Bemis is for artists, and the organization is today 41 years old, which is a very unique thing to say for arts organizations in this country founded by artists. And with that note, I thought it would be most appropriate to call forth a testimonial from one of the artists that provided a letter of support as part of our application materials. So I'm just going to pull out one sentence from Charlie Friedman's letter of support, and that is, quote, "My cultural life in Nebraska is deeply enhanced by Bemis's continued contributions to the state and the country." And I thought what most resonated with me, and perhaps with you all as you read through our materials, and that is how Bemis Center is very much an arts organization rooted in the state of Nebraska, but has, through its programming in support of arts, reach way beyond the state, our city, and this region throughout the country. And starting with the words of an artist is really important, but also that letter was joined by one of our ongoing local partnering organizations, No More Empty Pots. And the letter that the CEO wrote, Nancy Williams, shows how our collaborations in our community are extremely important and help us deliver the mission of the organization and to ensure our organization's impact locally and nationally.
Thank you, Chris. All right, primary reviewer is Maria Laura.
Yes, and just to clarify, even though Chris is a Floridian, I really don't know him. just to clarify. So this is another great organization. Nebraska's major cultural institutions are really showing up strong today. They have strong programming. The residency program is particularly strong. And in the narrative about this, it would have been good to just get a sense of what artists have been participating, so we can get a sense of the quality and the type of artists. This information is provided further on in the application, but at the beginning, it just would have been helpful to know, what are we talking about here? So it's just a comment for the future. And I really appreciated the new Sound Plus experimental music program, and the fact that they're offering space for rehearsal and recording of new music works, as well as a venue to do live concerts for the public. I would have liked some examples of artisan programs to help formulate like that overall picture, like I mentioned earlier. And I'm pretty sure that you didn't because of the limitations on the character count. So I get that. So I I take that into consideration. I thought the program schedule was helpful. Every month has 2 to 3 exhibitions related to with related public programs, such as lectures, workshops, panel discussion, film screenings, performances. One suggestion I would have for you is that these are listed in your schedule that you're providing to us as TBA, to be announced. I understand that at the time of the application, you probably don't have all those programs lined up. What I would suggest is in the future, provide just a plan, like even if it's tentative, and you could say tentative, subject to change. It's just to give the panel more of a sense of where you're heading. So just some concrete details about those programs, again, even if they're tentative. So the artist names were listed without any background about them. So again, it just helps the panel kind of get more of a sense of who you're working with and the caliber of artists. There's definitely that information below in the application and the work samples, which was incredibly helpful. So, and there's even more helpful information in the evaluation process section of the narrative about previous artists and their accomplishments. So again, all the info's in there. I'm just saying maybe at the top, just a couple of things to get us in the right, provide that framework. I love that you have an alumni convening in June. I hope that's an annual thing. I thought that the curator and residence program was excellent. I found it a little odd that the narrative, and this, you probably don't think about this, but as a panelist reading applications from multidisciplines, or, lots of disciplines, there wasn't a reference to, visual art or, what kind of artists are you working with at the beginning of the application. So again, the word visual doesn't appear in the program and services at all. So I think you work with primarily visual arts, but it's also, it seems that some performance artists as well, based on the programs. So the artist profile in the BMIS research project study, it seems that there are artists of multiple disciplines that are served through the programs. So that would have just been good to note in the program narrative. I thought you had a very nice value statement as part of the long range planning, a strategic plan. And I make one suggestion. I would offer that instead of tolerance, when you talk about working with diverse communities, that you consider using acceptance. Acceptance is going to be stronger than tolerance as we consider diversity. Accepting and celebrating our differences is definitely more powerful than simply tolerating them. So that's just a note for you for the future. As someone who's new to the organization, I would have appreciated a description of the facility somewhere in the application. So, and this is a note that I would make to anyone who's applying to the Nebraska Arts Council, understanding that you have applicants from out of state who are not familiar. I'm sure everyone from Nebraska knows BMIS and knows all the information, but think about those of us who don't. And I really had to find that information there. It is really a remarkable facility. But it would be good to have details about how many studios, how many galleries, key details about the actual physical plant. Is the building owned or leased by the organization? There's a fantastic picture in the materials that says that the building is located in Old Market and occupies 110,000 square feet. And the pictures of the interior are just stunning. The artist profile included as part of the study indicates that 73% of the artists that you work with are white. However, the study was from 2017, so I'm pretty sure it's probably shifted in the last 5 years, and throw in the pandemic to, mix it up a little bit. But it would have been good to know where you stand today in terms of the racial ethnic breakdown of participating artists. From the materials provided in the work sample, it's pretty clear that there is a real effort to be inclusive. So it is represented in the work samples. They're very strong, the work samples, and really provided a clear picture of the nature of the programs. I thought you had strong fundraising efforts, and impressively, they're working on generating support from international sources and major foundations in the US. Their signature fundraising event is the Benefit Art Auction, which raises 1/3 of their revenue budget every year. So that's pretty impressive. They mentioned the Catalyst Council Capacity Building Initiative has a goal to raise $4 million in operating funds for the center. It wasn't clear to me from the narrative what the Catalyst Council is. Perhaps maybe it's a friend group. If you could elaborate on that, I'd appreciate it. But definitely progress has been made. I mean, large progress. They've secured $1 million grant from the Holland Foundation, plus more than $1 million and commitments from the board members and other individual donors, which is notable. The key staff are all extremely qualified arts professionals with impressive backgrounds. The board seems to have a really good mix of business leaders and artists. I wondered about the racial ethnic composition of the staff and the board. The information is not requested part of the application. I'm just curious. And regarding outreach and engagement, they have very strong community outreach with more than 300 artists participating in numerous programs and 9,000 visitors a year. Their artist and resident cohort is very diverse and includes 50% of artists from the United States and 50% from abroad. They have very good partnership with the University of Nebraska, Go Big Red, and providing students with access to studio visits and lectures. Their collaboration with community organizations is very strong. They have partnerships with community nonprofits, social service organizations, and other arts organizations. The annual budget and financial statements with the independent accountant review report are evidence of a sound fiscal management. There's even a small endowment of $36,000 that they're building, and the board puts money aside in a reserve every year to handle emergencies. And even with the pandemic, the organization seems to be financially strong. I was surprised that given their high level of activity, the budget was only $2.5 million a year. I thought it was going to be a bigger budget based on level of activity. They do so much, but I'd be interested to know what the staff structure is. And payroll is almost $1 million. So I wonder how many staff members they have and how they're managing, the human resources. I bet they don't have enough staff. That would be my guess. I thought they had a solid education and outreach program to engage the community in their work. And they provide strong examples of previous programs, such as a collaboration with a Nebraska Writers Collective to present 10 poetry workshops with a visiting poet. I would encourage them in future applications to include some details on future programs, even if it's tentative, just to get a sense of what you're planning. The past outreach programs are evidence of compelling activities to engage your members and the public at large. In terms of audience development, the narrative was great. They point to having exhibition and promotional materials translated into Spanish, as well as advertising on a Spanish language radio station, which I thought was notable. They also note that they restructured their benefits to include lower income levels, such as military, seniors, and educators, which is nice. I encourage them to talk about any work that they're doing in the LGBTQ+ space with individuals with disabilities or other disenfranchised segments of our community. I did not see evidence of a detailed plan to educate policy makers beyond making a statement that they will, but that's perhaps something that Chris can elaborate on. And overall, an excellent organization doing incredible work in support of artists.
Terrific, thank you. Leah.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think the work you're doing is pretty amazing. Taking on international residents, that's huge. So both of your residency programs are very impressive, and how long you've been doing that. So congratulations on that. That's really so important. Appreciate that your programs, your exhibitions, your low-end performances are free. That access is amazing. I don't want to double up on a lot of what you said, Maria Laura, but I did recognize the inclusion of diverse artists in your activities, which is wonderful. In terms of your evaluation, I thought that it was really strong for the residency programs. Maybe more information on performance measures and outcomes of your other programs. A little more information on that would be nice. Your strategic plan is really long and robust, which is pretty amazing. I'm sure things might shift, through the years, but having that long-term vision is really great. And a couple of your long-term goals that I really found attractive were creating the Research Institute. What an amazing vision to help you facilitate all of that work. So that's an amazing long-term goal. And then your residency to resident, I thought was just wonderful in terms of diversifying the state of Nebraska and just bringing a different economy to it. So I thought that was wonderful. You're obviously doing great with your fundraising, your Mellon Foundation grant. That's huge. So good there. Appreciated your community relationships. I've discovered that you work with various people. So that's really nice. I love that you have your land acknowledgement and your racial equity statement right on your homepage. In one instance, it was on the banner, but both of those are highly visible. I think that's really important to people. That's a good starting point for someone who doesn't know a lot about you, and they go on your website. That's one of the first things they see. So that's really wonderful. I agree. Advocacy, you could expand on those activities and provide some specifics in the future for sure. But overall, you guys do amazing work. I love just, learning so much about what you do and your support of artists.
Okay, thank you. Mark? Mark?
I thought this was a strong application, in particular with the description of the residency programs. I did have a couple of questions. It was hard for me, and this may just be me, but I had a hard time figuring out how many people were served, how many people came, and looked at the art in Omaha or in other places. I had a little bit of a hard time with the other programming and the scope of that and how many people were served. And my other comment is on the budget. I was, when I looked at your budget, I was trying to figure out, how much, to the extent there was money that were going to these artists, that were in residency and maybe creating art and selling it, or how much. I just had a hard time figuring that out. So, for example, on your contractual services, you have $141,000 on commissions to artists. So that's obviously going to the artists. You have stipends and honorariums, but it's a little vague as to who. So I was trying to figure out, of your $2.5 million budget, how much of that went to artists. And on the earned income side, you had $380,000 for auction sales. Is that art that these artists made while they were in residency that is owned by the Bemis? Did that money go back to the artists? Another example, and while in your application itself, you did mention some of the foundations and such, but on your budget, you just have foundation grants and a number, which is a pretty big number, 860,000. This isn't critical. I just would have appreciated in the budget that's itself if you were able to list out some of the bigger ones. You don't have to list out all of them. So I did have a couple of questions that I was trying to answer and I couldn't answer. I was struggling with respect to your budget. So those were my comments.
Thank you. Kenneth?
Yeah, I will just echo some sentiments from my fellow panelists. I think you all hit the nail on the head. I would have also appreciated a more detailed description of exhibitions and related programming, especially on that program schedule. I also think it was a missed opportunity not to provide that third optional work sample. That would have been a really easy place to provide a link to the website, which I kind of missed in the application. I think it was buried in one of the attachments maybe, but it would be great to kind of showcase that. Like Leah said, the 12-year strategic plan is long, but I was glad to see that there are evaluations within that time period to assess the progress. I also really appreciated seeing direct feedback and survey results, which was helpful to understanding the organization. There were really strong letters of support, which was nice. You read a sentence from one of those earlier. That was great. And I would also encourage continuing to work on educating policymakers on the important work that this organization does, because it really is doing good things, and those officials should know about it.
Great. Okay, Chris, would you like to respond to any of the questions or things that the panelists have raised, or make some other comments?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your review and thoughtful consideration of our application materials. Having served on many similar panels over the years, I understand this is a very Herculean effort on your part. So I want to applaud you for taking this on, and to thank you for the feedback that you've just provided. I think perhaps I'd like to start with some of Mark's questions around our financial support of artists. And this is something that is an extremely important value of the organization, its level of support for artists. And I often believe that values in nonprofits are expressly reflected in their operating budget and how they manage their finances. So within this country, Bemis Center is one of few residency programs that actually pays for travel and for monthly stipends to artists. To participate in our program is absolutely free outside of a $40 application fee through Slide Room, which is our intake process for applications. And I would also like to express, and I know this was not mentioned in the application, that Bemis follows the nationally observed wage platform for paying artists and cultural producers. We do that for all of our programs, especially artists that are participating in our exhibition program. So for every artist that, whether it's existing work or new work, they receive a stipend to participate in an exhibition, whether that's a solo exhibition or a group exhibition of 30 artists. Everyone gets paid to participate, not the other way around. And thanks to our foundational support, and most recently, and perhaps most importantly, our grant from the Mellon Foundation, we are able to provide substantial stipends to artists participating in the sound program and performing live or virtually. And these stipends not only allow us to present new music for free, it also gives artists a real opportunity to experiment and show experimental work because they're not concerned about ticket sales. And we're able, through this program, to schedule live performances not based on tour schedules, who is routing through, but to bring in expressly for Omaha and Bemis, to bring in artists from all over the world, specifically for one-off performances, which is very rare for a music venue of any kind. And that's something I think that is not expressed within the application. Every year, about 74 to 76% of our operating budget supports the mission of the organization. And as the benefit art auction has very much been over the years, and a very popular benefit for Bemis, all of the artists that participate, which range from 250 artists in the benefit art auction, they all have the option to receive a 50% commission on the sale of their artwork. Most artists do opt for that. Others, especially board members that participate in the auction, they offer to give 100% of the sale to Bemis. the commissions that go to these artists range, in terms of a total sales, they range anywhere from $150,000 to $175,000 per event that goes directly back to artists. Since this event has been taking place at Bemis, I believe we have distributed back to artists over $1 million in art sales, which we understand that the standard auction model is problematic, and that typically no funds return to the artists that are contributing artwork to an auction. And during the pandemic, knowing that artists were extremely hit financially and in terms of resource security, we provided each participating artist with a $500 stipend, even if their work did not sell. And this was provided through a local anonymous donor after a proposal we sent to them to make sure that any artist participating in our event, to support the organization and to support the cultural community in Omaha, we made sure that they received some type of financial support by just participating. So I would love for our next application to NAC to have a little more transparency and clarity around our financial support of artists, because it is truly a priority of ours today, and it has been over the last 41 years. Moving on a little bit, I certainly took copious notes, and going to the there was a question about the Catalyst Council. Yeah, that was an initiative that was started to raise $4 million as not as an endowment, funds that would be spent over a period of time that would provide much needed operating support to graduate a lot of the operations of organization to the next level, giving the development department additional resources to hire more staff and launch into areas of fundraising that we either don't have or we underperform in. For example, right now we are developing a major gifts program as part of our larger development department. And so those resources have enabled us to develop structures so that we can secure major gifts beyond our annual contributions from members and donors. So our organization has not had an endowment. We have developed the Catalyst Fund to help provide a comparable model. However, we are, and I know this is not part of our application, so you would not know this information, but we do have the endowment conversation on the table, which is exciting, and that it would be part of our fundraising efforts around a major capital campaign that we will be embarking on in the coming years. So as we sunset the Catalyst Council, will be transitioning to a more formal institutional endowment, which is super exciting for the long-term sustainability of the organization. Sherry, how am I doing on time?
I would ask Mike that question because he's the timer on this.
Okay.
I think we're okay. Do you have some other comments?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to, there were a couple of comments about the diversity of our audiences, our staff and board. And I want to make sure that I provide a little more light to that topic. I think one of the organization's strongest ways of being inclusive and expressing our values centered on diversity are through the artists that we support. On page, I think it was page 16 or 17, no, sorry, page 11 in our application, we do go into greater detail of how artists self-identify within the residency program. If they do wish to provide that information, it is asked of them. But also through our exhibition program, we make with great intention to ensure that the artists that are participating not only have diverse voices in terms of artistic expression in medium, geographic location, but also how they self-identify with their identity. And I think that with one of our more recent exhibitions that was on view last summer, where we had, I believe it was 21 artists participating. These artists, which were based all over the country and in Canada, were exploring through their work and their personal lived experiences a broad range of topical issues that Omaha faces on a daily basis, in addition to other cities within this country, including immigration, food justice, racial justice, and climate change. And through that exhibition and the 30+ organizational partners that we had, we were able to thoughtfully present a cultural response to all of these very timely and pressing issues that all of our communities in this city are facing and trying to think through and make sense of, quite frankly. On our board, over the, I would say, actually since 2016, since we rewrote our bylaws, we have taken great intention to ensure we have a strong alumni population represented on our board. So we have artists that have firsthand experience of the organization with a voice at that leadership level. A third of our board self-identifies as people of color. And we've also grown since 2016 to have a larger national representation on our board, also reflecting the scope and reach of BEMIS's programs.
Perfect. Is there any burning question from the panelists? Or can we let Chris go about the business of his day?
I would say that his clarifications were so very helpful. So thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you all. I'm grateful. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Enjoy the rest
we
of your paneling.
Thank you, Chris. And if panelists want to do their final evaluations before we take a break. Mark, are you ready? Thumbs up. Okay, then I guess we're done. We have a break until 11:40. So we've got about 7 or 8 minutes. So we'll see you back. And thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
I'm not seeing anybody from the Sheldon yet, unless I'm missing something. Well, we were clicking along so well too.
Best laid plans.
Yeah.
So Kenneth, where in Texas are you?
I'm in Austin.
Ah. Well, I went to law school in Austin a long time ago. I love acoustic folk music, and Austin had the most amazing, like these incredible, basically they were professional, folk musicians who would come to Austin, and then they would go to these coffee houses where I could pay $1, bring my law books, and like listen to 3 hours for the price of a cup of coffee of these professional, amazing folk musicians, some of whom I still, have their CDs from back then, and just all along with the great food, and everything. My wife and I have always said that if we were going to move to anywhere other than Omaha, it would be Austin, Texas. So I'm jealous that you live there.
I love to hear that. Yeah, it's still like that here. There are a few more skyscrapers now, but there's still some great opportunity for some local music at a dive bar or a coffee shop. It's great.
That's so great. Yeah. What's the name? Is the restaurant still open? There was this really neat restaurant that was about a half an hour outside of Austin, and it was built to where you could watch the sunset. It was a margarita Mexican place, and you could watch the sunset over a beautiful body of water. Does this, maybe that's not still open?
I don't know if the specific one you're thinking of, but I think that there are a few places like that nowadays that kind of overlook the Lake Travis area. That provides some pretty good scenery. We've got good sunsets, I will say. The sun is harsh during the day, but the sunsets are pretty nice.
I don't, Mike, whenever we're ready to go, please interrupt me, but I'll just share one other great story. So I'm northern kid, coming down to Texas, no cowboy boots, no nothing. I had to adjust quickly, but the one thing I remember, so one of my best friends from law school was from Longview, Texas, in East Texas. And
that is exactly where I'm from as well.
Really?
Yeah,
oh,
that's where I grew up.
Kirk Florence was his name. I think his mom may still be there, but any event, we all came down about a week early from Christmas break our first year. There's about a group of about 10 of us, and we all stayed at his house for what he called the East Texas Barbecue and Catfish Tour. And so we went around to all these amazing restaurants and places. But I remember he drove us up, and this was maybe about 20 minutes outside of Longview. And there's this barbecue place, and it's made out of like tin. And we drive out, and there's, the barbecue smoke coming out of, holes in the roof and everything like that. And we're there at 7 p.m. And he goes, well, he says, he says, Mark, this is the best barbecue. He says, here's the thing, they're never open during the day. And I said, well, why isn't this barbecue restaurant open during the day? And he says, well, this restaurant is closed whenever the health inspection department is open. So they're only open at night because they will not be open when they can be inspected by the health. That's where they've been for 30 years. Well, there you go. There's a little bit of East Texas for you right there.
And I hadn't heard of that one, so I'll have to look into what that place was.
And it didn't stop you from eating the food, right?
No, it was great barbecue, and I was 22 at the time. I could have cared less.
Cared less.
A wonderful story. I don't mean to break in, but we are not joined by Sheldon yet, but we are joined by Joan Squires and Sabrina Weiss from OPA. So if you would all like to move on to the next applicant, and then we can come back to them.
Okay, perfect. All right. Joan, Sabrina, you are with us?
We'll let them in now.
Okay.
Take just a moment for them to join us. There we go. They are transporting in, as it were. There's Joan. Welcome, Joan.
Hi, everyone. I understand we
Joan.
went ahead a bit, so I was scrambling, so I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Are you good? Are you ready to go?
We are.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Well, the way we're going to do this is that we'll let you and you've got Sabrina, I take it, let you guys introduce yourselves and what you do for the organization, and then you've got 2 minutes to give us that summary analysis. We'll let the panelists give their comments, and then we'll come back and you can have responses and all.
Great.
Go for it.
Thank you. It's nice to meet all of you. I'm Joan Squires. I'm president of Omaha Performing Arts. Sabrina, want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, Sabrina Weiss, Vice President of Development for Omaha Performing Arts.
And I know I've got 2 minutes. I do want to start, though, by saying how grateful we are for the support of the Nebraska Arts Council and the funding that we received through the Basic Support Grant, which has been tremendous for us. Omaha Performing Arts is the largest arts institution in the state of Nebraska. Our mission is threefold. We bring in, we feel the highest quality of touring artists and presentations for our community in the state. We are stewards of the Orpheum Theater. It's a 2,600 seat proscenium theater here in Omaha, and the Holland Performing Arts Center, a 2,000 seat concert hall, and a 350 seat Scott Recital Hall in that building. And soon opening a little over a year from now, Steelhouse Omaha, which is a 3,000 capacity venue across the street from the Holland. We also have a strong commitment to education and engagement activities, serving very diverse communities across not just Omaha, but the state of Nebraska. And we're now approaching 15 years. We opened in 2005. So a lot of performances. We serve about 500,000 people a year. And we have hosted, over 5 million in our time through that. We have had a tough couple of years here with COVID and have spent our time connecting to the community during that period through live streams, Jazz on Your Green, Holland Center Outdoors, and then have cautiously opened and have been very pleased to welcome back many thousands of folks now to both buildings. We're seeing great attendance and return to our education and engagement activities. Our focus going forward particularly is to not just welcome audiences, but to continue to grow our idea work through Voices Amplified and some programs that were in our application we can talk about. So I may give you back 10 seconds.
Okay, that's great. Primary reviewer, Maria Laura?
Yes. This was a great application to review, excellent application. This organization, as Joan was just saying, they run the Orpheum Theater, which is a 2,600 seat proscenium theater, and the Holland Performing Arts Center, which is a 2,000 seat concert hall and also a 300 seat recital hall. And they program these venues with education, community engagement programs. It would have been helpful, by the way, just as a note for your grant writer, to have the seating capacity to the venues and the narrative, because I had actually go looking for it because I was trying to get a sense, again, as an outside of state panelist, to get a sense of the magnitude of the organization, which is quite large, as you said, the largest in the state. As you said, the OPA, Omaha Performing Arts, attracts about 500,000 visitors a year. They have about 500 different events featuring high quality artists and 4 different really stellar performance series and great kids programs. They bring in major dance companies and a Broadway series that has 7 stellar Broadway shows, everything from Ain't Too Proud to 6 to Frozen and Hairspray, etc. They're offering free outdoor concerts in Northern Omaha, and they're considering an outdoor concert series in South Omaha this summer. As she said, they launched the Voices Amplified series, focusing on art and social justice, including a Black Voices Matter program, which is great. Their schedule of programs and services had an extensive list of their many programs, including national educational partnerships with the Broadway League, Carnegie Hall, and the Disney Theatrical Group. Of note is a new professional development program that they launched to support the future of C-suite executives for BIPOC executive leaderships in the art. I think that's what it's called. And I really enjoyed the inclusive language that they use in all of their program development section when they talk about the diversity of the artists and the balance of the shows and how the season of performances and activities aligns with their mission. For work samples, they provide a video of the Voices Amplified program and a video of the news report covering Grammy Award nominated Salem concert choir performance. And their third work sample was a Theater Essentials online program where they had an instructional tutorial about scenic painting. So I thought that was fascinating. It was a good mix of work samples to get kind of an idea of their programming, which is very deep. As a large arts institution that uses Tessitura, which is many performing arts centers use this incredibly complex, massive ticketing software system that has integration across the board called Tessitura. And they have this enormous database to use for analyzing important information in their evaluation process. They also conduct audience surveys for the performances and education outreach programs, and they hold feedback sessions with stakeholders. Overall, they had a very comprehensive evaluation program. They have a thorough and solid 3-year strategic plan with specific action items and corresponding timelines that really focuses on deepening their commitment to DEI and rebuilding the institution post-COVID. They're planning to open a 3rd venue for live music, Steelhouse Omaha, in mid-2023. And their $23 million budget shows a very healthy 70% of earned revenue with 30% in contributed income. They raise $2 million every year from corporations, foundations, government, and individuals. And their annual giving focuses mainly on the ticket holders. They have a very active volunteer group, the Presenter Circle, and a philanthropic program, the Young Patrons Circle. They've secured more than $100 million in funding to support the construction of the new music venue, which will have a capacity of somewhere, I think it's 1,500 and 3,000 capacity. The staff list demonstrates a highly experienced team of arts management professionals. There are 12 board members, mainly corporate and foundation leaders. 30% of the board are BIPOC, as well as 31% of the staff. 6.5 million go to salaries of their annual budget, and almost 11 million goes to the programming. Again, their whole budget is like 23 million. And they have a very healthy rental income, admissions and subscriptions. All that revenue is coming in at about $10 million. So that's a very healthy amount of earned revenue. And they did very well with the COVID-19 relief funding from the federal government, including CARES Act funding, shutter venues, operator grants that were administered by the Small Business Administration, as well as Paycheck Protection Program loans. So they did well keeping their staff afloat during trying times. They have strong community outreach programs, including social service organizations and the military. They have a multitude of collaborations with community partners, including schools, social service organizations, other arts organizations. And for example, they partner with the Autism Action Alliance to provide sensory-friendly performances. Their education program serves about 100,000 every year and focuses on providing inclusive arts programs to diverse populations, including low-income and geographically underserved. This is a very well-established cultural institution with great programming and a strong commitment to diversity and equity, which hopefully will translate in even more diverse programming and participation from their community. So thank you.
Thank you. Secondary reviewer is Kenneth.
So in addition to the robust year-round programming, this organization has effective educational efforts. I think the Theater Essentials online library is an especially wonderful free resources for students or anyone, frankly, who may not be able to take advantage of in-person programming. The Voices Amplified initiative is a great tie-in with the season in an effort to lift up marginalized voices. So that was wonderful to read about. You guys are offering a lot in 1 year, which is really wonderful. And the programs seem very responsive to the community. I appreciate that the organization reevaluates its strategic plan year to year with major revisions happening every 3 years. That allows for some great growth with the community as well as in response to the community. I also liked the strategic plan specific mention of economic impact in the community, which is a great indicator of success. The strategic plan was super detailed and outlines a really good way forward for this organization to kind of rebuild post-pandemic with a new focus on DEIA for audiences and artists and staff. So it seems like you are all thinking forwardly and engaging everyone as needed. And you all have really strong collaborations that help you reach your goals and your mission. So overall, I was very impressed with this application.
Thank you. Leah?
Yes. No, this was a great proposal. I really agree with the other panelists. What stood out to me were your collaborations with your community and educational partners. Those were very robust. So that community partnership element is definitely there, and I appreciated that, along with your DEI efforts and that being top of mind and influencing your activities, being part of your strategies. And then in evaluation, I really appreciated your Voices Amplified committee and going to community members and diverse ones and seeking their help in evaluating. That's just, I think, a wonderful thing to do. Really embracing that being like a community-centered performing arts organization. So overall, very nice.
Okay, Mark?
So we are going to, we limit our comments here to what's in the application as opposed to anything outside of the application. So in that spirit, I'm just going to say that your programming in your submission was excellent. You know, we always, for NAC, we always look to arts leaders and our basic support grantees being the core of that. And I think your application is the, you know, in many ways the gold standard on certain of those items. So that is much appreciated, all that leadership and gold standardness that you bring. So those are my comments based on your application.
Thank you.
Okay, Joan and Sabrina, anything that, usually this is the time when you respond to all the questions they ask and the concerns they have. And I didn't hear a lot of them, but anything that you want to respond to or ask them or whatever.
If I may just, and I appreciate everybody's comments from the panel, so thank you for that. If I may just add a couple things I do want to highlight in the application. One is the importance for us as well is to be statewide. And I want to make sure that we also recognize the program that we have of the Nebraska High School Theater Academy that does reach across the entire state of Nebraska, because the funding is, from the Nebraska Arts Council. But we have over 8,000 students in that program at over 80 schools all the way to Scotts Bluff. So that's been a very important core program for us as well. So not only serving this region, but across the entire state. So I just want to note that. I also want to say I appreciate the comments about the community collaborations, because we have done that with those groups, not for them, but with them. So everything that we have developed in many of our programs have been done with these community committees and resource groups, so that we are doing that in collaboration with what the community is looking for, not just that we're saying, here, we've got this and we're handing it over to you. So we've had wonderful relationships, and a lot of that's been necessitated on going outside of our buildings and having performances in North Omaha and in South Omaha and other parts of the community to build the relationships, so that then we can welcome more diverse audiences to our building. So it's a process, and we certainly all have more work to do, but we've had some great community partners, and we, again, appreciate so much the support in the Nebraska Arts Council. Sabrina,
Joan,
am I missing? I'm sorry,
Yeah, I
excuse me.
think one thing is that 3 of our panelists are not from Nebraska. So you might want to reference how that diversity, when you mention North Omaha and South Omaha, what that means, because they wouldn't know.
Sure. For us here in Omaha, largely when we say North Omaha, it refers to Black community primarily, not specifically, but that tends to be what the makeup of that area of Omaha is. And in South Omaha, it tends to be Latino or Latinx. In South Omaha. Certainly there are others as well. So our programs have really tried to target some of the areas of underrepresented community members, and to make sure that we're doing inclusive work. Sabrina, am I missing anything from your standpoint as well?
No, I just wanted to echo what you said about our wide reach with the NHSTA, the Nebraska High School Theater Academy program, but also appreciate the panel's feedback about Theater Essentials Online and also our Voices Amplified series. Both of those are offered virtually as well. So it gives us a chance to reach sort of the geographically underserved communities. And we actually ended up making a full-time position where we have somebody that just helps with all of our digital content. So just wanted to mention that. And just appreciate that all of your feedback. We, as you said, we do a lot. There's a lot of breadth and depth to what we do, and sometimes it's hard to include in a soundbite. So I appreciate your feedback on the grant.
Yeah, and maybe the last piece I'll add is that we, for the last 7 years, had a Vice President of Human Capital Inclusion, Janine Scott, who helped us establish many of these programs long before the murder of George Floyd and some of the recent attention. Janine had done such great work for us. She got recruited to the Broadway League to be their very first diversity officer for the entire Broadway industry. She is a successor now on our team, Bianca Harley, who came from the Chamber of Commerce. But Janine did wonderful work, and it's wonderful to see somebody grow who's from Omaha to take on a national position. So we're really proud of the work she did for us, and now is doing for the entire industry nationally. So that's been great.
Anything else from the panelists? Okay, then thank you, Joan and Sabrina. And panelists, if you will just check your scores and make any revisions, let me know when you're ready. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
everybody.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Mike, do we have anybody from Sheldon? I'm going to assume Mike is probably Mike.
Your sound's not coming through.
Yeah. You don't look muted, but we can't hear you.
So we've got the face with the mouth moving.
Josh just reported in the chat that there is no one in the waiting room. So if that is the case, I think you just go ahead. I am pretty sure, Rachel, that everyone has been notified. You were notified of who is going to represent Sheldon. And if there was some sort of mix up or something, we've given them plenty of time to contact us to let us know that. So I think we just go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, I was going to say we're 25 minutes over.
Yeah.
So I think probably, if anybody has an objection, then if not, I think probably that's what we do is you guys need to handle it however is appropriate by law. Okay, then I have a question regarding tomorrow. Our sessions, open sessions start at 9. Is there we do not need an 8:30 pre-session, do we? Or do we? Because today we had introductions and we had procedure and so on. We don't need to repeat that, do we? Unless the panelists would like to meet beforehand to discuss something.
If Mark is going to do more stories, then I would be happy to log in early. Story time with Mark is great.
I just want to make sure.
So, Suzanne, Rachel, Mike, what do you think?
I think if we just, everybody just comes in 10 minutes before, just so everybody's settled and everybody's here, and we can take a deep breath, and I think we can go.
Okay. 8:50, then panelists and staff will log in, and at 9 we go live. Perfect. Anything for the good of the cause before we finalize today? Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to understand what's happening with Sheldon Art Museum. They didn't show up, so what's the protocol?
You're going to go ahead and review them, and I think maybe your score might be influenced by this. This is everyone else has shown up, and the CEOs of some of our largest organizations, as you can tell, take this very seriously. And I would assume that if there was some breakdown, they know how to reach us. So
are we gonna
go
ahead, Kenneth.
And just in terms of providing them feedback, do they miss out on that opportunity altogether now?
Yeah, you have to go by what you are reviewing and assuming. Yes, I'm sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
Do you want to do that review orally so Anne can take notes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and do the review like we would. They're just not going to be here to interact.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay, well then let's go with, see, Leah, you're the primary reviewer, right?
I am, yes. All right, well, it was very interesting to learn about the Sheldon Art Museum more. They do have an internationally recognized collection, which they make loans domestically and internationally, which is incredible to not only the reach of those objects, but the scholarship surrounding those objects. So that's very beneficial just in general to the field of art, and then to the members of those communities that they're able to go out into. So that's a real highlight, I believe. They have wonderful educational partnerships with the University of Nebraska and the Lincoln Public Schools, and also schools statewide. They connect their programming, obviously, to state curriculum, and they serve a lot of students. They also have their Sheldon Statewide, which is their traveling exhibition program that goes statewide, goes to approximately 25 communities, reaching around 360,000 people. So excellent reach there. And they also include an exhibition catalog and lesson plans to go with those visitations. Going back to scholarship, their level of scholarship, it seems to be high, not only with their loans of objects and other activities with scholars, but they also have their Sheldon's Collection Observation Lab. So this allows classes from the University of Nebraska and scholars to visit and study and assess items in their collections that are not currently on view. So to kind of open your vault in a way like that, I think is really wonderful to share. Let's see. They have increased their, like so many arts organizations, increased their online access during the pandemic. They're continuing to do that and digitizing their collection for use. So again, great resources for educators and scholars. They do have a docent program, and I was hoping to learn more about that. You know, who is a docent? Because you know, I think depending on where you are, that can be a multi-generational group. That can, maybe it's a younger group because of their connection with the university, being a university museum. So I was very curious to learn about that, to see, and really hoping that it was a nice mix, kind of more of one of those multi-generational docent programs. I really appreciated some of the themes of their upcoming exhibitions. They seemed highly relevant at this time. They were addressing topics such as labor and gender. So I would like to see a few of those after learning about them. Some past recent programs also dealt with contemporary issues. One of them was Person of Interest and the other Nation of Waste. If you want to give that a Google, I thought that those were pretty engaging exhibitions. So I did have an important question that I wanted to ask. I really, you know, going through their website, going through the application, just doing a couple of Google searches, I was having trouble understanding their engagement and their relationship with local artists and Native artists. All right, do we want to pursue? Is Laura?
We can go to her after we finish the review, okay, and then she can respond.
Oh, okay. Should I begin again then with a couple of these questions?
No, you've been live streaming all along, so she's been able to hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Okay. So yes, really interested to learn more about their engagement with local and artists and also Native artists. That being such an important aspect to being a community-centered museum. In terms of artistic merit, I've talked about scholarship, I've talked about their collection, artistic merit very high. And I think really looking at some of their funders, the Henry Luce Foundation, the NEA, this speaks to that artistic merit. So in terms of programming and evaluation, I thought the program evaluation in general was sufficient. It seemed pretty standard. I think about asking questions about a sense of belonging, particularly for a museum of this size and being kind of university based. So that might be something good to focus on, especially when considering how to engage the broader community. For strategic planning, I did like that they included community members. It actually specifies 100 community members and museum stakeholders participated in phone interviews and on-site group workshops to provide input for the vision and direction of the museum. I think that's excellent. I would have liked to know kind of the makeup of those 100 people and who were they, how are they connected to you, kind of what's the diversity of that group. But their strategic plan seems solid. for sure. Again, like the highlights of it or the points of it were Nebraska students will co-create their own experience. Our research and creativity transforms lives and learning. Every person and every interaction matters. Engagement builds communities. So that last one, I kind of have focused on. I trust that your relationship with the university and the students is strong, but kind of what outside of that sphere. So, but in general, like really robust strategic plan. In terms of development, I really like that. I liked seeing in the strategic plan that it specifically addresses the operational funding outside of the university. I think that's great. I think that's another way that's going to kind of expand that reach and in the community. So that includes unrestricted streams of income, establish a planned giving program, continue to cultivate with donors, and then create endowments for key staff positions. So that those are all wonderful things, and that's out of the strategic plan and concern to development. Again, going back to some of their awards, they've got an IMLS awards. Those are hard to get. That speaks to your credibility for sure. And it sounds like they have a pretty strong membership program. So looking good on that front. In terms of community partnerships, like I was talking about in the beginning, they very much have strong relationships with their educational partnerships, particularly the university and the Lincoln Public Schools and statewide schools. So like K through 12 and type situation, kind of going back to what I said earlier. So serving a lot of students and in an educational capacity for sure, which is wonderful. But I would like to understand more about the community organizations that are served outside of the educational partnerships. So if I could learn more about that, we could. I think that would be helpful. And also, I'm curious about any programming for older adults and maybe multi-generational programming. So I know that there are free tours and there are free group tours, which is great. Maybe how those audiences could be embraced if they're not already. Let's see here. Again, just would learn more about community-focused outreach and programs. The marketing strategies, that piece of the proposal, they weren't real specific outside of the media. It did emphasize collaborations with community college, first-generation college students, and promoting their free admission to families, which I think is a great emphasis in terms of their marketing. But there weren't a lot of specifics on how they were going to reach like those three specific audiences that I just mentioned. So that could be a little stronger. In terms of advocacy, it looks like sufficient protocols for that.
Okay, finished. Okay, then Mark, you're the secondary reviewer.
Yes. So I really appreciated the words on the annual touring program across Nebraska. I think it's always important when for our BSGs, when they're able to serve the entire state. I thought that was good. I noticed that they gave specifics that their website usage increased 68% from March of 2020 through March of 2021, which was obviously meaning that they're trying to serve their audiences and were successful in doing so. I thought their strategic plan involved a large group of people. which then become stakeholders and potential donors, and also as well as bringing their expertise to the strategic planning process. So I found that particularly noteworthy. I did have a couple of questions that came up from this submission, and one of them was to try to get a handle on the number of people that it served. And I'm going to apologize in advance if some of this material was in the proposal and I just missed it, which absolutely could be the case. But for example, I was looking for, how many people have come through the museum itself. I didn't see that for any year, including, and obviously I assume it was zero for a certain percentage during COVID, but even in the last year or in the last 10 years, I didn't see any numbers. I didn't see any numbers of UNL students that were served. I saw a goal in the strategic plan that 90% of UNL students well, actually, I may be confusing that with another. I didn't see how many UNL students are being served by the Sheldon, either because they're coming to the museum or, or in some other fashion. I didn't see that. Even in the annual tour, they did say that they had reached 365,000 people over 30 years, but for me, that begged the question as to what the trends were, or putting aside COVID, how many were served in the couple of years before COVID, or since COVID has loosened a little bit, what is going on there? So I was left uncertain as to how many human beings were actually being served by Sheldon in the various ways that you're serving. And then the other kind of general question that I had was over the budget. So it's a $1.7 million budget. In the costs, you have personnel from the state, and then you have personnel for Sheldon Art Gallery itself, and then you have personnel endowment. I did have a question. I'm assuming that most of your full-time people then are technically employed by the university, but maybe some of them are not. And I didn't understand if that was endowment, if that was some kind of an allocation of overhead of the university's endowment to your income statement, or whether you had your own endowment and that was a person. So I was a little bit confused on that from the kind of expenses perspective, and then on the income side. So in the 1.7 million, there was 953,000 coming from the state, which is UNL, obviously. I only saw $45,000 of corporate support, and on the other on the foundation support, and it was a little bit. There was one that I couldn't tell if this was the UNL Foundation. But if you took that out, there's about 110,000 of foundation support, and I suppose on some level the Sheldon's affiliation with the university is a great thing for everybody. But I was concerned, I guess, by the relatively lower level of corporate support and foundation support as a percentage of overall budget. Most of the other organizations that we're looking at today have small to none of other public funds coming their way, certainly smaller. This organization is already getting over 50 to 60% of their income from publicly available funds. And so I would ask if maybe to address those two primary questions. Number one, how many people are you serving? And then number two, can you generally comment on these budget questions that I had?
Okay, Kenneth?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in agreement with the questions and concerns that Leah and Mark raised, especially pertaining to the audiences and the budget and communities served. I thought the work samples on the website gave a nice overview of the programming that is offered. I would encourage the organization to continue expanding that programming and seek diverse audience or artists to showcase, especially local artists. I know Leah raised a question about that. I do want to point out the significance of the traveling art and how great that is for the surrounding communities and outside. I did also want to applaud the advances the collection staff was able to make during the pandemic. It seems like a lot of that grunt work is hard to get done in a normal year. So it was nice to see some time and care carved out for that work. And also echoing what Leah said, a large focus of the community outreach, as we saw in the application, is education-based, which is great, but I would be curious to know more about efforts being made to reach other specific communities.
Okay, Marie-Laura?
Unmute, yes. So first, I just want to speak to the budget question that Mark had, because this is something that I've seen with a lot of the cultural institutions that we have in Miami that are under the wing of an educational institution like the Florida International University or Miami-Dade College, where two things. One, obviously they're going to have a lot of their budget come from public funding because they're part of that educational institution. So we don't hold that against them. And then we find that they're usually, and this, Laura might be able to shed some light on this, but here in Miami, I know that our institutions like the Low at the University of Miami has a challenge in building corporate support because they're a part of an educational institution. So a lot of our cultural institutions that come under the umbrella of a public institution or a university has a challenge with that. Despite that, I see that they do have $45,000 that they're projecting for the coming year in corporate support. So that's good. And then my comments on the application is that I thought they had excellent programming. They're showcasing world-renowned artists. I thought they had great evaluation methods that are very clearly defined. They're in the middle of a strategic plan and have identified 4 guiding principles: stewardship and sustainability, profile preservation, experiential and innovative engagement, and inclusive and relevant programming. I really think that last one is really key to where we are in terms of our cultural institutions serving the community, especially those that are entrenched in educational institutions. The museum has very strong partnerships with Lincoln Public Schools and other schools across the state. And I think it's great that they digitized their collection and now they have 13,000 objects from the permanent collection available online. That's really impressive. So overall, I thought it was a great institution doing good work.
Okay. Laura, are you online with us now?
I am. I'm right here.
Okay, great. Would you like to then take a few minutes and respond to any of their questions or concerns or that they raised?
Absolutely. First, I do want to apologize for being late. I'm sorry that that happened, and I take responsibility for that mistake. But thank you all for your patience. All right. So to talk about Sheldon, I want to. This is kind of going way back, but to give you the overview of how we work, because we're a little unusual in that the origins of Sheldon go back to 1888 when a group of community members came together, held an exhibition, and started collecting artwork as a community club. And that later merged with the university. So we now have this beautiful building, the Sheldon Museum of Art, that houses both the collection of the Sheldon Art Association and the collection of the University of Nebraska. So we have a 501c3 and we have the university, and they each have their own budget. And that's for the most part, that works really well for us. It can be a little confusing when we explain it to other people. So I'll say just generally, for the most part, salaries run through the university side. All employees of the museum are university employees, though a couple of those salaries are they're funded by the Art Association, and they give that money to the university, and a slightly complicated process, but all of our employees are university employees. So on the university side of the budget, for the most part, salaries run through there. The university takes care of our building and our collection care, so ensuring the collection and that sort of thing, and the care of the collection. On the SAA side of the budget, which is how we apply to the Arts Council, that's where all the fun stuff happens. So that's where all of the funding for exhibitions goes through the SAA budget, educational programs. When we did our digitization project, those grants came through the SAA side of the budget. So I sometimes say that anything, the university pays for this space and the employees, and then anything we want to do comes through that SAA side of the budget. So we present both sides of the budget to you so that you can understand, because obviously it takes both sides to run the museum. So you see all of it there, so that you can get the full picture of what we're doing at the museum. So hopefully that answers some questions about kind of some of the salaries. Another budget question you had was about our levels of corporate and foundation support. One of the things we do a major gala every other year, and we just did it a couple weeks ago. It was very successful. We got a lot of corporate and found a lot of corporate support. Next year, we won't be doing that. Our budget reflects that we won't have as much corporate support. We raise, well, my board doesn't even know this yet, but it's looking like we raised about $160,000 through that gala. And we carry over half of that to next year, as which shows up as applicant cash because it comes from our reserves since it was received this year. So that's how we kind of spread out that gala over 2 years. So the corporate support, you're right, doesn't look great for next year, but that's on purpose, and it will look better the year after. As well as, and foundation support has a lot to do with, when we have special projects, that's generally where when we get foundation support. Some of the other questions, am I on a timer here, or can I just keep talking?
Yeah, within reason. Okay. I would say that I would in another no more than 5 minutes.
Okay, great. I won't even take that much time, I don't think. There were some questions about our outreach, and I would concur with your assessment that our outreach is very education focused. We see our mission as being an educational institution, and so a lot of the outreach we do to audience is based in our education, our engagement department. So our outreach to the Lincoln Public School students and to university students, not just the University of Nebraska, but all the universities in the area, and our statewide program. We do purposefully see that as the main way that we do our outreach. We do work with other community organizations. We have a strong history of doing that. We had an exhibition, this probably been 5 years ago, but we asked other museums in the area and nonprofits to come and help us curate an exhibition that was not particularly art-based, but it was a way to engage community. So there are projects that we do that are less education focused, I suppose, but that really is our emphasis and our mission. So I think it's a fair assessment that is how we do it. Sorry, I'm going to look through my notes here to see if there were some other questions you raised. Programming for older adults was one specific question, and I would this may not be intuitive, but our docent program that works with the elementary students we actually think about that in some ways as an outreach program for people who tend to be older adults. And we provide a pretty robust series of educational programs about not just about the tours, but about art in general. And it becomes really an educational opportunity for that group of people. So I would say that that's one way, for example, that we have outreach to that audience. In terms of, Mark asked specifically about the numbers of people served, and I'd like to address that. When there's not COVID and when we're not closed, we annually see 60,000 people come through the museum itself. And of those, about 9,000 are LPS students, Lincoln Public School students. And you asked about the number of UNL students, and right now we get about 20% of all UNL students through the museum in any given year, which was a significant increase over the past couple of years. We've really been working with faculty to increase that number. So we're at 20% right now. Our Sheldon statewide program serves about 5,000 people annually. So you had referenced the large number over 30 years, but about 5,000 a year at 8 venues across the state, 1 month exhibitions. And that is, for the most part, there are certainly school students who come to that, but that is a real community outreach audience. Let me see what
okay, panelists, are you, anything else that you want her to address? Does that kind of do it for you, Laura? You okay?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And again, panelists, take a few minutes to go over your scores and make any adjustments and all. And again, Laura, thank you for coming. And are you all panelists, are you all done? Okay, then we'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:50. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. It's been a good time. Thank you.